Everyone, I apologize for the delay. Joyce is very, very sorry for hitting traffic.
Yes, I am. Coming from New York City, I apologize on occasion. So it was over 3 hours, 3.5 almost. So,
Totally fine.
yeah.
I'm just teasing.
No. Thank you for your patience.
So let's start the March 27th meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Joyce Giffra, Carol Zacharias, we have Brian Stoller, our board attorney, we have Alex Wallach, as always, and we've got some great environmental consultants, Lisa, and I'm sorry.
Will Bowman.
Will Bowman, okay.
And on TV.
And on TV, Linda Munn. Hi, Linda.
Good evening.
Okay, let's start right off with a written decision from the previous meeting. It's 3185. That's 199 Halsey Neck Lane. This is the garage extension, and the decision that Brian had written for the previous hearing did not. How would we describe that, Brian? It didn't actually.
Didn't express your the position of the board.
Didn't express the position of the board. It's been rewritten to deny the application. Tom, who is not here, was recused anyway. So an aye vote is a vote to deny the application. So Linda, how do you vote?
Deny, aye.
Aye.
What you need first is a motion.
Okay.
Motion to approve the decision.
I'll motion to approve the decision as written.
Second.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so Linda is an aye. Carol?
Aye.
Aye. Thomas abstain. Joyce?
Nay.
You are a nay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm an aye. All right, so the decision as written is affirmed. Yeah.
And I'll have that filed with the clerk's office.
Okay,
and
thank you,
we'll share it
Alex.
with the applicant as well. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is 3186, that's 39 Moses Lane. We had closed that for a written decision at the last hearing. John Bennett, the homeowner's attorney, has requested that the matter be reopened. Can you walk us through the protocol for doing that?
Sure. Simple. You closed it. If you're going to reopen it, you need unanimity of the board members present.
Unanimity of the board members present. Okay.
And it would need to be re-advertised as well.
If it's reopened,
If
yes.
it's reopened.
If it's reopened, it's as if it's a new application, original application, same process with
Okay.
regard to notice.
Okay. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, were we not to reopen this, John would just be able to pull the application and refile. So, but we're in the position to reopen and maybe save his applicant some money and time and application fees.
Sure. Anytime before a decision is adopted by the board, an applicant can withdraw.
Okay.
Sure.
So me personally, John wasn't here to present at the last hearing. I would be willing to give him to reopen it and to give John the chance to present the application in the light that he best fits. I think that's only fair. So I'm going to motion to reopen the case.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you all very much.
Well, we haven't voted yet, John.
We made a motion. I thought you all said aye. I'm sorry.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right.
Do we have to vote on it, or are we
You
good?
did. You just did.
Okay. Oh, yeah. You're welcome.
So we'll put that on the next legal notice accordingly.
Okay.
I think we still have time to get it on the next meeting, if that
Okay.
date.
Do it in May. Just do
Okay,
it in May.
sure.
A May's one. I
Okay.
don't want to rush you, right? I don't want to take advantage of your items here.
So we'll plan for May 13th?
That's fine.
Okay,
Thank you, Alex.
sure.
I wonder when I'm going to get the hang of how voting works. Okay, so first carryover case 3190, that's 484 First Neck Lane. That they requested an adjournment. So I'll move to accept that adjournment. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 And I believe that
Okay.
was an adjournment to...
April 24th.
Yes, there we go. So that'll be adjourned to that date.
Okay. All right, next case, 3195, 121 Lee Avenue.
Hello, Billy Knock, First Coastal.
Hey, Billy.
Let me put the plan out for you guys. Thank you, we did address some,
Billy, we just need you to sit and get real close to the microphone so Linda can hear you at home.
Yeah.
And we can record it, thanks.
Lee Avenue, do you remember that?
Lee Avenue.
that. The orientation is correct?
Let's see it yet.
I
You're gonna
think
do it
may need to
facing
be
you.
Turned around for the overhead camera. Sure that whatever I just told you to do will be the wrong way.
There we go.
Yeah, upside down.
There it is.
So I think there was only minor comments on
Very
this
minor
from the
comments.
last hearing.
Yeah,
So instead of a retread of the whole thing, why don't we just walk
Sure.
through how you address the comments from Lisa?
So the specific comments were with respect to the treatment of the Phragmites and the other invasives that exist in this buffer. We did propose on some of the heavier root mass to have machinery. That was suggested as to stick it with just basically hand tools, and we're fine with that.
Okay.
It's a limited amount, so if we have to do it by hand, we do it by hand.
Okay.
And then the second part about it was the red fescue. We have been able to source that with sod, but it's very difficult to do so. So instead of using a native red fescue sod, which was brought up specifically to carry non-native fescue as well in it, we're going to go with just topsoil and seed, which will get a true fescue seed.
Okay.
So that resolves that issue as well.
Okay.
I think those were the only two specific ones.
Lisa, there's two new comments as of
Yeah.
today.
Yeah,
So I'm going to just introduce Will here for those who don't know Will Bowman. He's
Okay.
really our wetlands expert, and so he has some additional, he's looked at this in depth, and we've discussed back and forth that, and I think fescue was the main issue, but.
Yeah, and first off, I'd like to commend the property owner for proposing to do this undertaking. Ultimately, the removal and replacement of these invasive plants and replacement with native trees and shrubs and wildflowers and grasses will provide ecological habitat uplift, increase in ecological quality to the benefit of Hetty's Creek. So I think looking forward to kind of nailing down these minor issues and helping get this project kind of implemented. So I appreciate that with the excavation or the digging. But I still wanted to, I think let's hand to the extent possible. There might be some larger material that you might need a small piece of equipment to get in there.
And I think you pointed out specifically trees.
Or really large shrub,
Yeah.
maybe a large olive, right? So we don't want to be able to help you do that work, right? Rather than hamstring you. So the biggest issue is the fescue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not a part in the pond, but you really need to get into the weeds on this. But
Good one.
The red fescue, there's a huge number of subspecies.
Yeah.
There's a huge number of cultivars. They're not all native. So we just, I saw the submission that you guys provided that you're going to try to provide a native one. So just you've referenced Long Island cauliflower.
Yeah.
So we'll just submit that whatever that cultivar or subspecies is.
Sure.
We'll compare it to the New York Flora Atlas. And if it's a native, then that's great.
Yeah.
I know some of the ones that are used in like the sod mixes, chewings and creeping red usually aren't native.
Not true native.
But we'll just, so we'll just, the intent is to get entirely native grasses. So if we can get a native red, great.
Yeah.
If not, so replace it with some other native grass.
Yeah, we just for background, we've run into this issue before with getting native sod, which is the preferred way. It's quicker, it's there. native fescue sod. There was a place in New Jersey that supplied it. They no longer do, so we had to source out other options, which I think the best option at the end of the day is to actually plant with the native seed.
Mhm.
It's a slower grow, but it's a defined species.
And just one other, I'm less concerned about it on the path, right? Like the path, I want that to function well as a path for the for the applicant. So there, it's not going to be going to seed.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So just provide a submittal for that
Okay.
Long Island cauliflower
Sure.
mix, and then we'll compare it to the Flora Atlas, and then
Fantastic.
issue a final verdict on it.
Great. Well done.
Are we comfortable approving this pending those?
Yes.
Yeah, Bill, I know you do the right thing,
Thank you.
and we'll write into our language the usual annual inspection.
Well, I think there should be, these often have
Monitoring reports.
this is an undertaking, like they're going to be at this for a number of years. The invasives will try to grow back. So I think in your plan you had a kind of 4-year time horizon. It's advantageous, I think, to have a requirement for like a annual monitoring report. You know, nothing. We're not looking for a scientific study, but just progress,
Yeah,
photos,
and updates. Sure.
that type
Happy
of
to
thing.
provide that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we want to, we need H2M to draft a wetlands permit for review for the next meeting, I think would be the next step?
Please do.
With those conditions
Those
incorporated.
conditions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, thanks, Will. Appreciate
You're
it.
All right, and then of
Any
course
other-
our compliments to the homeowners as well.
Yeah.
I love seeing applications that really model what we would love to be seeing
Yeah.
everywhere.
It benefits
Um,
everyone, for sure.
So it's great. So let's see. I will move to close for written decision. And
Second?
yeah, second. All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
All right, that was Lee. Let's move now to 3197 85 Down East Lane.
Good evening, Mary Jane Asado, Bergstein and Asado, 21 South Main Street for the applicant, and we're here with Jim Walker and John from Inner Science. Basically, the application before you was for a modest dock on an otherwise vacant piece of parcel. And if you're familiar with this parcel, I think it's not exaggerated to say that the wetlands restoration project that was done previously with Inner Science and my partner Gil Flanagan is a resounding success. I mean, the switchgrass has really flourished here, and the noxious removal that had happened earlier has not come back. So I know that you are looking at viable buffers, and I would present to you that this property certainly is an example of that. I will, since this is not a dimensional variance, it is for a modest dock, I'll defer to Jim to do the primary presentation. All the other approvals, just for, as you well know, the other municipal approvals for New York State DEC, Army Corps, New York State, and the
Town trustees.
the trustees have all been obtained.
The photos, Mary Jane, sorry to, before you walk away, the photos in the application are current photos.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, Jim Walker from InterScience. John Ciccarello from InterScience. John will bring up all the plans. One clarification, this is Southampton RE Partners LLC. That's 85 Down East Lane, separate from the adjoining property. It's important to note that they're checkerboarded correctly and the ownership should be noted.
Do you mean the property directly to the east that is built at home recently?
That's to the left is 95 Down East Lane.
Right.
And that's a
Different LLC.
different ownership. We were part of all that stuff that's happened on this property for many years. The wetlands restoration that was done there is probably the most spectacular one that I've seen in the village of Southampton. What we're asking for here is a small dock assembly to get kayak, canoe, paddleboard access to Hetty Creek. If you like, I can walk you through the construction details, but the first item that we solicit when we start a project like this is soundings. John, you want to bring the soundings up? Those were provided by sea level mapping. This dock assembly goes to 100 feet off the mean high water mark. That's important to note because that's the Board of Trustees pier line, and that's what you're allowed to have, in particular for Hetty Creek. The-
Max allowable?
Yes. That dock ends in a 4x6 drop platform. 4x6 drop platform is designed to step down from a low-profile fixed pier catwalk and allow somebody to put a kayak or a canoe in the water and step down the ladder into the kayak or canoe. The dock is decked with IP decking. The IP decking is spaced 1 1/4 inches apart. The only reason why that's important, or I bring it up, is because we have to provide 60% light transmissivity to get permits for a project like this. So the light can go underneath the dock and allow the vegetation to grow. Again, it's kind of important because the project sponsor spent a fortune planting wetlands and buffer species here, and it's pretty spectacular, and the dock goes through it. It's a 4-foot wide access to the water. The application, the owner's authorization, the applicant endorsement, all that material was submitted. The next item that John's going to bring up is the dock plans. Those dock plans were drawn by this office. There are no variances required. The dock is set back from the south property line sufficiently, so no variance is needed. We had the village re-verify the wetlands line. It was staked in the field, and then Will went out there and took a look. Pretty impressive wetlands. Will?
The buffer and the wetlands look terrific.
The dock proposed is also pretty spectacular. It's a well-designed and pretty dock for this particular property, and it's going to service the Rittenbows quite well. We submitted a deed. That's the deed that references Southampton RE Partners, an attorney opinion letter. John, you want to bring up the permits? We have a DEC permit, was issued March of last year. We have an Army Corps permit, March of this year. We have Department of State general concurrence, and we had a Board of Trustees permit. So the other regulatory agencies have been on board all the way through this process. This dock is very similar to the dock at 95 Down East Lane. Almost identical. It's a IP decked dock, and it's going to provide kayak and canoe access for 85 Down East Lane. The wetlands were verified by Will. The survey notes were added. We submitted those separately to the village. Subsequent to the town trustees permit, we have now obtained Southampton Engineering Services engineered plans for the dock. John, can you show those? No. We didn't submit the engineered plans, 'cause they're just done.
That's fine.
Luke, we can submit as a follow-up. And really, that's about it. The reason for this dock is to allow the Rittenbows to have access to the water for 85 Down East Lane. It's a big family, and they need to be able to store the kayaks. The kayak rack that's approved will provide easy access to the water for 85 Down East Lane, kayaks, canoes, paddle boards.
Okay. The material that you said the deck would be made out of, say it again?
IPE.
Okay.
IPE.
Like IPE, IPE? IPE,
If you know how to, if you know how to say it better than I do, you go
No,
right
no, I
ahead.
just want to make sure we're talking about the
IPE.
same thing. Yeah, so the tropical hardwood.
It's pretty substantial dock. It's also attractive, but more importantly, it matches with the tropical hardwood framing, and it makes for a dock that will be there for a long time.
Understood. It's a great material choice, but I thought that, I know you have to get the light transmission. I thought it had to be the mesh, like plastic material now. Is that not necessarily the case?
If you get the light transmiss, the 60% of the void space, then
Okay.
it shouldn't really matter how
Okay.
you get there.
Okay. And so what's the gap?
Luke, we've done this before in the village. 1431 Meadow Lane has the same style IPA decking, and they're 1 1/4 inch voids in between,
Okay.
and that provides the 60%.
Okay.
We have to do that to get a Army Corps permit, to get a DEC permit, also Board of Trustees.
I understand. Okay. When you say that access for the family at 85 Down East, there's no home on the property.
There's no home on.
So they're just coming from somewhere else and want to use
Rittenbaugh's built a house on 95. They have a big family. They want to have access to both docks so that they can use the kayak.
We can't record your comments unless they're on the microphone, sorry. The minutes are being taken remotely.
It's my understanding it's actually 2 families, okay? And so, because I asked this question, and they indicated that they don't want to build, there's 2 separate families. They do congregate there. The dock on 95 is modest. It's also for canoes and kayaks. And they said they're not really prepared to build another house, even though it is a buildable lot. They are enjoying the property without that, but they would like to be able to, to enjoy their riparian rights. So I really don't think it's the village interest to encourage somebody to build another house just so they can access the water. In this instance, I believe that we're all in agreement that the wetlands out there, the restoration, and what's happening is really spectacular, and non-disturbance would I encourage this board to take that into account. There's no requirement that you have a house. It is a buildable lot. And, the reason that they want a second dock is apparently because of extended family. And that's 2 families are using, that's why they did the checkerboarding. One family owns one side, 85, the other family owns the other side. But the party that owns 85 does not want to build a house there. I mean, they're related, interrelated, but it's more than one family that's using these docks.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to understand what's going on because.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want the board to think that there's like 15 people living in this house and they're spraying. I specifically asked that question. Are we talking about one sort of large family? They said no. There's 2 families. That's why this has been checkerboarded. So.
Okay. Now we don't know if that's 2 families, like parents and kids.
Yeah,
and probably not necessarily our business. But it just seems to me that 95 Down East Lane already has a dock, right?
Yes, it does.
And
It's modest. I mean, that dock has been there for a while. It's not. It's again only for kayaks and for canoes.
Sure.
And basically, it gets tight. I was asking. I'm not a dock person, but apparently they thought it through, and there are too many kayaks and canoes for comfortable use on that dock. It's not huge. Again, it was limited because of the soundings and whatnot. So they elected the option of building another dock here on this separate buildable lot and maintaining the other natural habitats because they just really would like more access to the water in a convenient fashion rather than all crowding down on 95.
I think I just want to clarify, and Jim, this has come up maybe on cases with you before. I don't view these, and my board members can have a different opinion, I don't view these applications as questions of riparian rights, because of course they have access to their wetlands and their water unrestricted right now, right? Can we agree to that?
If you want to talk about riparian access, I think you should speak to the attorney. I don't quite get your point.
It sometimes feels as if these applications are couched in a sense that a denial of the dock would somehow restrict the homeowner's riparian rights. And I just want us to all agree that that's not really the case.
We're not supposed to.
Sorry.
I believe that, as I said, I'm not arguing the law right now because I haven't researched it. If you're saying that a denial of a dock, your position is not restricting riparian rights, trying to access the water when you have wetlands and you're not supposed to disturb it starts getting dicey. I think it's a fine line, and I'm not trying to be argumentative.
Yeah.
There are restrictions, and that's why you have to have elevation. You can't trudge through them. There are a lot of regulations, even though it's your land, when there's wetlands vegetation involved. So, can you really practically access the water when you
Yes.
have those things?
Yes. Say it with me so I know.
I'm not prepared.
I need to know that you're coming at this in a.
I'm not prepared to do that because as I said, I haven't researched everything on point, and so I didn't really expect that answer here.
Okay.
That question here today. So I'm going to have to put that off to another day if you know.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. You guys have looked at this property. What do you think?
Yeah, Will's been out there, because as they mentioned, he verified the wetlands. The application's all in order, everything that they've represented is accurate in terms of having all their permitting. There's one minor technical detail, which is that we do require an FEAF for all special wetlands permits, and there was an SEAF, I believe, in the application, so that's just an element of village code, that's a quirk here, but that's a minor thing to complete and submit. I don't know if you have anything to add, Will, based on your experience?
No, I don't have any concerns from the ecological or wetland point of view. They've
Okay.
complied with the typical state and trustees standards for the dock design related to the water depth and width. And they have picked a relatively narrow portion of the buffer to kind of get through. So I don't have any concerns with that respect. You were kind of alluding to the question of the dock on the second property, and that's certainly outside of my expertise as a
Okay,
wetland
but from the
biologist.
ecological wetlands
Mhm.
perspective, aside from the small technicality, you are supportive of what they're proposing.
It's magnificent out there. It really is.
I know. Brian,
Yes.
this is a dock, but it's also an accessory structure.
Mhm.
Are accessory structures allowed when there is no primary structure?
I defer to the building department. I have an opinion, but that first should be coming from the building department.
I can tell you that I did raise this question with the building inspector. Typically, you're correct that accessory structures are not permitted where there's not a primary structure. I think historically that policy has not always applied to docks
Okay.
in the history of the village, I think, because sometimes you do have waterfront properties associated with a separate property. Like, for example, across Meadow Lane, you might be familiar with, where the house is on one side and the dock may be on the other side of the street. So he determined that that was not an
Okay,
issue in this
that's an
particular
interesting
application.
point.
We examined that, Luke. And this is not one or two. There are multiple properties throughout the village where a dock, it's not like a garage or a swimming pool. So there are multiple properties throughout the village where docks have been permitted, no other structure, primary structure allowed. So we do have information as to that if you'd like for us to submit it.
Linda, what do you think?
Well, my only question is, will the pathway from the house be somehow made and clear to everybody how they're going to get from wherever they are to the new dock,
John,
rather than
pulling up the
traipsing,
site plan
willy-nilly through the,
Pull up the site plan.
all that beautiful natural foliage and grasses? Because it looks like it's a long way from the house to the new dock.
Maybe if you zoom in, that could be a little bit bigger.
Okay, so on the
It's a
lower,
perfectly good question.
sure.
We ramp up to the wetlands line. That's when the dock starts. That's pursuant to DEC, Board of Trustees. Various regulatory agencies require us to ramp up before we get to the wetlands. For the area in the wetlands buffer, that's switchgrass and Indian grass and little blue stem grass and all the other native plantings, we're gonna have a pathway, and it'll be planted to native red fescue. It's
If I
a
take a,
4-foot
okay.
wide path.
If I take a look at the existing dock on the lower left corner there, and I see that swoopy path go toward the home, it almost feels as if before that pathway leaves the house and makes that S-turn south, that would have been a very natural spot to spring the new dock off of.
If you want to merge the two paths, it's okay by me. In other words, you're talking about bringing the path kind of,
Right where you have your cursor.
I think it's fine. On this side of that path on 95 down East Lane, it's lawn and landscaping. On that side, it's wetlands and wetlands buffer. So, and they did a huge common reed management plan here. The entire buffer is planted, and it's planted in native clump grasses, so that's pretty spectacular. And if you would like a reorientation of the path to meet the other path, I think that's fair game, that's fine. We could submit that as well as the full environmental analysis that Lisa was referring to.
Okay. What do you think, Joyce?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because I think it seems less invasive on the property to be able to join those two walkway paths.
Is that the property line, that hard horizontal line?
That is it.
Okay.
So by doing what you're suggesting, if they were to split the properties or build separately later on the other property, they're gonna have to go back in and dig up the wetlands and correct this. If you build it straight out now, the second property that does not have a home is unimpeded for its future development, and the wetlands would not be disturbed in the future.
That's also
That is
correct.
I think we have to.
Cut once, save twice.
But I think we have to look at this with the understanding that this is, for all intents and purposes, a single-family, two-property parcel.
Well, legally, it's two.
Right, but in terms of how it's going to be used, right?
For now.
For now.
For what they're saying, but
Yeah.
we're not the family, we don't know. I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
You are correct that if a second house is built, and we're not giving up that right, you are correct in your.
You'll be back here,
Yes.
and we'll be disturbing the wetlands. Yeah. I'm not saying don't do it, I'm just
Mhm.
saying that's the downside.
Well, did you,
I should also note that you have, due to the restoration planting efforts, there are some, large trees and shrubs in these areas too. So it's also good to, let's make sure that we don't move the path in a way that will then require the removal of a large tree or shrub. There is an existing kind of trail network out there. So I would recommend to use the existing trails to the maximum extent possible. Try to avoid any disturbance to native woodies, and then get to where both the board and the applicant are looking for to minimize the amount of new path to the dock.
So which approach uses the existing pathways?
I have
John,
no
would you mind
idea
going back to that
exactly
photo, the
which way
overhead
the
photo?
paths align out there currently.
This one?
Because we're talking about doing
Back
minimal
one.
damage, right? Yeah.
Keep going. There you go. Yeah. We were
And-
just
I
right
think
there.
the
Yeah,
issue
yeah.
is that aerials probably
I have
outdate.
I have a more recent aerial if that would be helpful.
I'll tell you what, why don't we allow this to come in and be routed correctly as best we can with up-to-date air photo and submit the full environmental analysis that Lisa asked for.
And for reference, this is a view from October where I
Yeah.
think it's
Mhm.
a little more
Mhm.
recent than what we had seen under construction.
I would just hate to see that dug up twice, because it would take years to, like he's saying, to regrow where we dig it now later, that's all. So I'd say cut once. I don't know which way that ends up, but.
Typically, the most effective way to get through a wetlands buffer is to use a 4-foot wide path and to grass it using native grass seed. I think it makes fairly good sense either way. However, if we go back to the drawing board and come back to something for the board's consideration at the next meeting, I think that's fair game.
Okay. So, Jim, sounds like you're
There-
asking
there
for an
are nice-
adjournment
And
to
There
the
are
next
nice
hearing?
paths through there.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can figure out something that's intelligent, come back to the board perhaps for the April 24th meeting.
Okay.
And before we open it up for public comment, I'll note that we do have the affidavits of mailing and posting there in the file.
Okay. Okay. Is there anyone who wants to say anything about this application? Sage, anyone? The hand raised? No? Okay. So I'll move to adjourn for all purposes until the next hearing, which is Alex.
Let's see.
April.
April 24th, I think?
Yes,
Yeah.
April 24th, that works?
Okay.
Okay.
Have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Thank you. You're gonna study riparian rights. We're gonna talk about it.
That was one of the worst classes in law school.
I bet. Uh, 3180 seems like it is already. Oh. Thanks, Will. Appreciate it. Good to meet you. No, yeah. And Lisa, is that it for? No, you're gonna stay on
Well, I was
for.
going to stay in case you had questions related to 36.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna go right to Shippies now. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna go a little out of order here in interest of, and out of respect for Lisa's time. We're gonna jump to case 319136 Windmill Lane.
And this is a new case. I just passed up the affidavits of posting and mailing.
I think before Lisa, you get started, let's just go around to our experts here and sort of set the table. Alex, you've been working on this for several months, years?
It seems like that, yeah.
Okay, why don't, and it's all Lisa's fault, and so why don't you tell us what's going on?
Sure. So the board, you probably might remember, has seen this property before. This is
Yes.
Shippy's Restaurant, which has been expanded in what's been called 3 phases. The first was a renovation of what's existing. The second was an expansion of the kitchen facilities of the existing restaurant. That came to this board because a restaurant is a special exception use, so they were expanding a special exception use without expanding seating capacity, just for restaurant purposes. It's a mixed-use building that has a restaurant on the ground floor, 2 apartments on the second floor. So this is a third phase of that expansion, which offers additional space. It builds out the vacant property to the south with an outdoor dining area. And it also increases the seating capacity by reallocating septic flow from the apartments to an expansion of restaurant seating. So they're here, this case is pending before the planning board for site plan review. It's moving to the health department. It has an application in front of the architecture review board. And now it's here for the zoning board for expansion of 2 special exception uses, one being the restaurant with the increase in seating, 2 being outdoor dining, which is a special exception use the board hasn't seen in a little while. There's a setback variance as well, and there are several variances requested from the special exception standards for outdoor dining, since they don't meet some of the standards in that special exception code.
So there's variances from within variances?
Variances within the special exception standards.
Okay.
And then finally, there's a request for a parking waiver, which the board has seen in some other cases in this area where an applicant says that they cannot provide the required amount of on-site parking. What they're asking for is a waiver of that parking in exchange for payment to a parking fund, so something that's called PILOP, payment in lieu of parking, that the village can then use to expand or improve municipal parking. And there's some criteria for when that's allowable in the code that you might remember from some adjoining
You were
properties.
here for the application down the street. Okay. Just to the apartments, really quick. Do they have current C of Os?
I have to double check. They were permissible as legal non-conforming. They were permitted to be renovated, which they were. I know there was an issue about fire sprinklers. I think that may have been resolved at this point.
Okay.
But as part of this Phase 3 application, those apartments can no longer continue as apartments. They're in this proposal, they're being converted to storage use.
So the brand new apartments will be converted to storage.
They need a septic.
That's my understanding.
Okay. Okay. Brian, is there anything we need to know on your side?
I don't, you're basically considering every single approval process that you're authorized to consider in this application, so good
Okay.
luck.
Except for an interpretation.
Interpret outdoor dining.
Okay. So then let's do the presentation, and then we'll go to you, Lisa. How does that sound?
Perfect.
Okay. 2 Lisas.
I know, it's hard.
Crazy. How will we deal?
I know.
Okay. Let's go.
So, good evening, board members. My name is Wayne Bruin, the firm of O'Shea, Marcinsigan and Bruin in Southampton. I was recently hired by 36 Windmill Lane, the owner of the property, a limited liability company. One of the principals, or the principal, is John Betts, who you probably met at one of the previous applications. I'm here to introduce the application. As you know, Lisa Zaloga, the architect, actually submitted an application to this board last fall. It's finally made its way in front of you, and as Alex, right?
Alex.
Has stated, there are other applications in front of the planning board as well as the architectural review board. And Lisa can report, or Lisa could report on those. One of the things that Alex and we have asked for is special exception approval for an expansion of the pre-existing Shippey's restaurant, which has existed more than 65 years, as this board is probably familiar with. The other thing is special exception for outdoor dining. And if you look at your special exception code, there is a requirement that you receive before you take an action the recommendations of the planning board. And I understand the planning board has also requested this board give them your decision as to whether or not you want to be lead agency under seeker. And I would hope you would either respond one way or another tonight so that the planning board could address that matter. I believe they've expressed in their opinion that they would want to be lead agency under this matter.
They would want to be.
I believe that's what the
Yes,
letter
they've
says.
declared their intent to be the lead agency, and there should be a letter to that effect in the file. So if the board does not object, they would be lead agency, and the zoning board would be an interested agency.
When was that letter issued?
Involved agency.
Involved agency.
March.
It was in March.
The deadline was April 2nd, I think, to reply.
So probably early March, usually 30 days.
Yeah, well, since this is your meeting, I would assume
March 3rd.
hopefully you could, by the end of today's session, that you could provide a response so that the planning board could be, determine how you,
Okay.
interestingly, the planning board has identified this as a unlisted action, despite this being, I believe, less than 4,000 square feet. That being said, the nature of the relief maybe jumps it into an unlisted action. That being said, coordination is both optional, and this board could undertake your own seeker review if you chose. I'm sure you're familiar with that. But just for the record, to go back, we all know that this property is on the easterly side of Windmill Lane, approximately 320 8 feet north of Job's Lane, and it's on the southerly and westerly sides of the Village of Southampton Municipal Parking Lot. This property was, if you looked at the tax maps and the history of the tax maps, there were, as recently as a year or so ago, 3 separate tax parcels. And those 3 separate tax parcels were based on how the prior owners acquired the properties. In particular, the northerly 25-foot parcel was where Shippey's always was and currently exists. The southerly 25 was acquired from the property to the south, which has the Rotations building, and that was approved as a transfer of property by the Village Planning Board in August of 1984. What didn't occur, which I know the Planning Board does now, is to make sure the tax parcels, when you do such a transfer, are merged. The properties were always in the name of Shippey's or their predecessor in title. The rear parcel was just an area that always gets shown on the tax maps as a separate easement area. It is an area where, if you're familiar with Shippey's, on the rear or easterly side is a paved right-of-way. It's used by the parcels to the south as well. So when recent applications were made, we had the tax maps merged, so this is all one parcel, consists of approximately 7,176 square feet. It's about 50 feet in width. The northerly half is improved with the restaurant, which has restaurant on the first floor and 2 apartments, and that's pursuant to a CO on the second floor, and a garage for storage for the restaurant use on the back. As was previously discussed, there's been applications made recently, phase 1, phase 2, and this is the phase 3, all of which were identified previously while this matter has been processed. The other part of this site is that the sanitary septic system lies partially on this property and partially on the adjacent village parking lot. And that was pursuant to an easement granted to the landowner by the village in 1972. If you're familiar with the rear, that basically green area is that was the parcel where the easement, and that's where the current septic system for the restaurant exists. And it extends off of our property onto the village. And that's pursuant to an easement in 1972. Recent discussions, though, with the health department, not only you're looking at upgrading the septic system to the necessary nitrogen reducing, but more importantly, that type of system requires much more additional area. And that caused, about a year ago, in discussions with the Village Board of Trustees, they authorized by resolution the grant of a sanitary access easement agreement, whereby it would allow our client to further expand the septic system, replace it, and put in the new nitrogen reducing. I assisted in negotiating that easement with the village attorney, and that was recently executed and signed by the parties. I did provide 1 copy, but Luke asked for 7 copies for the board, which I have here. So you can all have a copy of that easement. So that easement would allow, and that essentially, we've had an application pending at the health department, and the health department, basically from a design standpoint, has everything they need, and they needed 2 things. Despite having the resolution of the Board of Trustees, they wanted to actually see the easement, and that's what prompted it to get recorded now. The other thing they want was a seeker determination from the village, which hopefully the planning board, and that would be the last thing for them to approve the necessary sanitary system. So I think that's very important in the analysis as we go forward, that one of the positives of this whole application, just like elsewhere in the village, that we're upgrading certainly a substandard septic system, and given its proximity to Agawam Lake and the entire drainage system, that is a positive that we have to admit that is necessary in the near term until the village can actually get sewers. installed.
Do you mind if I interrupt you to ask a question about the health department? Do they have the exact same plan before them?
Yes, I would say about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I joined in a teleconference with Lisa Zaloga and Lisa, your planning consultant, Alec. And one of the things they identified was some confusion over what plans were in front of the health department, what plans were in front of the planning board, and what plans were in front of this board. Since that time, the plans have all been revised and they're all the same at this point. And so what you see today is what's before the health department as well as what's before the planning board.
Alex, you explained this to me at a very high level. Can you go a little deeper into what the planning board was looking at then versus what the village had, and which way did we end up going?
Yeah, part of the distinction lies between the difference between indoor dining and outdoor dining.
Right.
The health department regulates indoor dining more strictly because they assume that it's full year-round dining, and outdoor dining less strictly because it can only be used part of the year. The village is the opposite. We regulate outdoor dining more strictly because it requires a special exception because of potential impacts to the neighborhood. So there was conversation about whether the adjacent area described as a beer garden was going to be indoor or outdoor, and by what definition. And we were trying to make sure that we were being consistent with the county's definition. And I think consensus was reached that it couldn't be fully enclosed as it had been showed on some earlier versions. Even though the roof is retractable and windows can be open, if it has 4 walls and a closable roof, it was considered indoor. So the decision was made to have one side be open air so that it would meet the village's definition of outdoor, and then be consistent with outdoor dining as was shown on health department plans.
Why couldn't it be indoor?
It could be indoor for the village, but they don't have enough septic capacity for it to be indoor year-round seating because they're at the maximum allowable, and it's based on the number of seats.
Yeah, and beyond being just a little bit more context in the septic, because I think this is one of the important things to understand about the struggle with this application, and it's morphed and changed a few different ways, and they're trying to get a lot on one small site, and the septic capacity isn't there for everything that it would be required in indoor. In fact, the existing restaurant is way over what would be permitted, but it's legacied in. It's been that way for a long time, so that amount can be maintained. But that amount cannot go up according to Suffolk County Department of Health Services. So they have to find a way to add seats without increasing their septic flow at all, which means they have to take other things away to do that. So taking away the apartments is one of the methods there, because if the Suffolk County Department of Health Services sees that they're increasing their septic flow, they're going to say that that's not permissible because it's just so far over what would be permitted anyway at this point that they're unlikely. I will say they will not get a variance for additional flow.
From the health department?
From Suffolk County, yeah.
Was it just the removal of the apartments upstairs that got them to an acceptable threshold, or were there more trades?
Well, I'll leave that to Lisa and
Okay.
the engineer, but essentially it was removal of the apartments, which has the most flow,
Okay.
which gets us to that point. The issue, as Alex had identified, though, was this village question, whether this was indoor or outdoor. And because the health department was considered what we had first proposed as outdoor. However, it was raised. We then met with the building inspector and had him look at it, and it was based on his opinion that he said a wall had to be removed, and that was revised. The health department has no issue whether we have one wall or 4 walls.
Right.
That's
right.
not accurate. I actually spoke to the health department, and they said that if everything is the definition of outdoor dining is that there are not walls. So it's the walls that make it indoor. So the roof could be retractable. You could put an awning over a space, but as soon as you've enclosed the space, you have indoor dining. So that was because I wanted to clarify, because the initial pushback was the health department is okay with this as outdoor dining, and so I wanted to verify that was true. And that is not what I heard from the health department. The health department said you have to have open walls. If the space has to be open, it cannot be conditioned. If it's conditioned space that's fully enclosed, it is indoor dining.
So Lisa, it's against two walls, right? It's against two exterior walls. If one wall is open, does that rise to the health department's level of open in your understanding, or does it need to be the two that are possible to be open?
I think that it has to be not conditioned space that is seasonal. That would be space you would not be occupying year round because it's open to the weather. And if you could be occupying it year round and it's effectively whatever method you've enclosed it in all principles, the whole reason for this health department's calculation is that once you have full-time like dining there year round, you have a heavier flow into the septic system.
Sure.
Versus assuming that there's going to be a busy period and a slow period through the year. So the open nature of it, and I haven't, like I've seen this rendering and the plans which indicate that will no longer be a closed wall with windows, which in previous versions it was. But the initial version I saw was just a site plan which indicated that it was going to be a gravel base with a rollover awning. So it's been presented a few different ways. But I think that it's just understanding what the problem with the site, the challenge of the application is. It's this element of wanting to increase the capacity here and have a vibrant restaurant with a very, very beautifully designed area that I would very much like to go to, but with a very constrained site in terms of it's not a large site. It's in a particularly groundwater management zone. It has already way surpassed the septic loading. So that's where this struggle of actually finding, the balance. And in some ways, some of the relief they're seeking, if you're going to ask, like, do they need to have outdoor dining as opposed to indoor? Yes, they cannot do this with indoor dining. So, you can weigh it either way in terms of what it means for the application, but that's why we've gotten to a situation where it's been a bit of a confusing back and forth about what the application actually contained.
So there's no red stamp yet from the health department?
No.
No.
Because of the two matters that I said.
Sure.
First is, unfortunately, the health department doesn't follow the seeker law. For them to say, I'm going to wait until your board or the planning board does seeker is contrary to the law, but nonetheless, that's what they do.
I'm very familiar with the brutality of the health department.
Yeah, so they will not give any final approval or red stamp until that has occurred, but they're also waiting for a copy of this easement, which they now have.
Okay.
So the last thing is this seeker determination. Assuming that is done, we would have a red stamp.
Do you have a green stamp?
Green is afterwards.
Green is final when it's approved, yeah.
So are there any comments from the health department yet?
So,
formal comments.
Lisa.
Well, yes, you can probably speak to how many rounds you've had so far.
Right, I think we were on NOI number 7, but they skipped number 6. So, the last go around, we have answered all of those other than the secret. The last thing was the easement. There were a couple minor tweaks regarding the things that Ed Armis is our engineer, that he needed to make notes on the drawings. As far as I know, and I don't have anything in hand from them, as far as I know, the fact that we sent off the easement today, and the secret was the last thing.
Okay, but my point is, you have a real dialogue going with them. And
yes, we've been in front of them since a year ago.
Okay.
And we started with probably 35 things that they wanted revised. We've had 2 in-person meetings with them. And again, we showed them the roller cover, we showed them what we were doing. It was all laid out. We had those conversations. If they had a different conversation after the fact, I have nothing, I don't know anything about that. But we now are all on the same page, as far as I know, that it is outdoor dining.
Okay. And Lisa, other Lisa, you're new Lisa. You're a little skeptical of that being formalized by the health department.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that the zoning board has to dwell over on the issue, but I have not seen the letters. I haven't seen any of the NOIs from the health department. I have not seen their most recent submission. So I can't really comment on what's been given to them or how close they are, or like if I think that, you know, or even if we're seeing the same thing that they are. I just, in follow-up to we had two, in follow-up to one of the planning board meetings, I had called them to clarify some things because I was getting one message, but then it wasn't looking like that from what I was seeing.
Mhm.
And I was really shocked. I struggled to find a definition for outdoor dining in Suffolk County Sanitary Code, and it just didn't make common sense to me that indoor space would be considered outdoor dining. So I wanted to speak to somebody there so I spoke to the director of commercial projects, and he told me he'd been in the SHPE's meetings previously, so he was very familiar with the project, even though he's not the reviewer. And yeah, that now was a month and a half ago maybe, so I don't know what's transpired between them, so it's.
I can tell you, since as far as this board is concerned, when the application was originally presented, it didn't include outdoor dining. I think the assumption was that it would be indoor dining. And when the change was made to remove that southerly wall and make it open air, that's when the denial letter was amended to include the special exception for outdoor dining. And that's what triggered that request being made to this board, and then the variances from the code provisions thereof.
Okay, so we agree that it's outdoor dining, probably, and you say that the village regulates outdoor dining more stringently than indoor dining. Can you speak to that?
So indoor dining is a special exception use, which they're asking for here as well. There's some criteria in the code that pertain to restaurants. There's also a special exception in the code for outdoor dining that has more specific requirements. For example, you're limited there's a cap on outdoor dining. There's not a cap on indoor dining.
Cap in terms of?
Total number of seats.
Okay.
So for example, the code limits outdoor dining to a ceiling of 50 seats. That provision wouldn't exist for indoor seating. There's also a ratio of indoor to outdoor seating. You can't exceed 75% of your indoor seating capacity in outdoor capacity.
Are they?
They are. They're asking for relief from that provision.
Okay.
That's a restriction that doesn't apply in indoor seating. There's several additional criteria for outdoor seating that wouldn't apply. Another one is that you're not permitted to have an outdoor bar, so a service bar, whereas you're permitted to have an indoor service bar. So there's those additional restrictions on outdoor dining that are built into the outdoor dining special exception. There's also the approval that comes to this board is also one written into the code that expires annually and then comes back to this board to renew.
For outdoor?
For outdoor. That doesn't apply to indoor. So there's that annual monitoring component that's built into the way the code is written. And they've asked for some relief from that as well.
I was, I guess, under the mistaken impression that occupancy was determined by the health department via calculation on your sanitary abilities. Yes? No?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
There's, for the purposes of getting their health department permit for their septic, there's also the approval that this board will give based on the special exception approval, which is also involves the number of seats. Because the number of seats for the zoning code also determines the parking requirement. So the village also has a say in the number of seats because that's how we regulate parking and that's how we regulate uses, particularly for outdoor seating when there are those additional limits on seats. That's our local law that's in addition to the health department regulations.
Okay. So I apologize for moving so slow. I want to understand all of it.
It is very complicated because the calculations are different.
Are you following?
I'm totally following. Yeah.
You're okay. Linda, how are you doing?
But I've read it, so.
I'm following it.
Okay, so so the application that went to the health department, the amount of seating was determined by the health department, more or less.
Yeah.
Right? It falls under their threshold. Or
Yes,
it
yes.
follows their.
We had conversations with them regarding the calculations, hence the reason that we have changed and gotten rid of the apartments and made those calculations. So Ed Armis, the engineer, has done all those calculations and they've been submitted. Those have been submitted to the health department basically,
So
since the
while,
beginning.
okay, so while the health department is good with it, that number of seats is over the ratio in terms of what the village considers acceptable for indoor versus outdoor.
Correct. It exceeds the cap, the ratio, and it includes the outdoor bar component, which we don't permit outside.
Can you see a scenario, Brian and Alex and Lisa, where we go forward with this application? Should we wait until the health department issues a formal application before we? Should we wait for the health department to approve this application formally before we really dig into this?
As a regulatory board, I would suggest that you wait until they take that step. Tonight, though, you're being asked two things: the substantive application here, and also with respect to SECRA, whether you want to agree that the planning board shall serve as lead agency. You certainly can get through that aspect,
Okay.
even if you don't get through the substantive part.
Okay, agreed. Can you run down for us pros and cons of us versus planning board as lead agency?
I would recommend that you defer to the planning board to serve as lead agency.
Okay.
Can I be heard on that?
Sure.
Usually, the issue of lead agency is which board is best equipped, but also has the resources to review the environmental impacts. Interestingly, and no offense to the planners, but literally, the items normally within the purview of the planning board, such as off-street parking and lighting and landscaping and things like that, there's virtually nothing on this site. And by virtue of the parking waiver, we are providing and restructuring the 2 parking spaces on the back. And so, yeah, the planning board could do that. But ultimately, it's this board who's going to determine whether or not the request, the magnitude of the request or otherwise is something that would have an impact on the environment. So I don't mind if you defer, but that happens all the time. But I'm just saying that you certainly, in this instance, and it isn't clear, the most important part is you have the planning consultant and the planner that's advising the planning board can advise you just as much as the planning board. So that's that point. But I would just hope one way or another, if you're not going to do it, then you get the response back to the planning board so they can act in due course. That being said, there were some other aspects I wanted the board to know about the application.
May I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Are we saying that the planning board doesn't have a Lisa?
She has been preparing. She's
Lisa
been
is
doing
the
this
Lisa
for
for
the
planning board.
Yeah.
I work with the planning board as well.
She's-
So
Yeah.
just as far as like secret lead agency, the purpose of having a lead agency is to consolidate the review.
Sure.
And so in some cases it can simplify it for applicants. They don't have to go and do many reviews, but it also in a complicated case can just put all of the review in one location. I see the point that you're making with the amount of decisions that the zoning board's effectively making in this case, but very often, because the planning board's going to do site plan approval, which will come after the zoning board decisions, it makes a lot of sense for the seeker review to happen at that stage. And you can not only have the option to accept them as lead agency, in which case you kind of are basically just saying that whatever they decide, we accept that as the determination. But you also have, at this time, are able to give them insight. So if there are things that you want them to consider in their seeker consideration, you could always put basically send that note to the planning board saying, yes, we accept you as lead agency, but please remember to consider X, Y, and Z environmental impacts, in your review. But
do they have environmental experts advising them?
That's Lisa.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
They have the same staffing as you have.
Yeah.
That's not
Yes.
going to be any different.
So they would have that expertise available to them?
That's what I'm saying. Both this board and the planning board have the same consultants, same planner, same access to the resources to make the decision. So it's not as clear cut in other applications that you might have to defer to the planning board. I'm just pointing that out. But
Okay.
I'm not saying one way or
That's
another
why
you should
specifically
do it.
Lisa is here, because
Yeah.
her and Alex are the most steeped in this application so
And
far.
I'll mention that that also assumes a coordinated review, which is optional. If you don't coordinate your review, then this board and the planning board are each responsible for SEQR for their own determination. The benefit of the coordination is that you only have to, one board does it on behalf of all of the village agencies that are approving it.
And if you object, it quite possibly may have to be determined by the DEC.
Yeah, we
Which
don't
we're
want
not
to do that.
gonna
I've had to do that before. Lead agency challenges aren't fun.
Do you have an inclination, or do you have a gut feeling one way or another?
I think, I mean, I understand the challenges. I think for the planning board to be the lead agency would make the most sense. And I feel, or I believe, and maybe making the assumption that there's a lot of historical knowledge just about the plan for the village, and maybe other factors that we don't quite have the institutional or historical perspective on.
Okay. Linda, do you have an opinion?
I think we should be the lead agency because it is going to affect the environment and the community for sure. And I think that that's what we do. We make sure that it's consistent and helpful to the community. That's our job. So I think we should be the lead.
Got it. Thank you, Linda. Carol?
I'm kind of torn, but I go with the planning board because to me, if you're talking about a movie theater and a restaurant, things like that, that screams planning board to me. And as long as they have the experts available to them to protect the environment and the community, I think that suffices. So all things, I think the scale tips a bit in their favor.
Okay.
For me.
Brian's advice is good enough for me, which was to defer to the planning board. Okay, so let's just formalize that.
Sure, and then the zoning, and as was mentioned.
Before you do that, can I just make a few other comments and then?
Please do.
Because I understand that this matter will be adjourned because we want to see what happens at the planning board, and we've heard some questions here. Maybe by the next meeting we might have some further input from the health department. That being said, one of the important things, and I'm sure Alex knows about this, and the planning board will address it, but I think it's important for this board to know about is the comprehensive plan recommendations. And I'm talking about the most recent comprehensive plan recommendations in 2022. And I have a document which I'll ask to be passed. I'm just going to summarize, but I just took the liberty of reviewing the comprehensive plan and providing you, so this document is just giving you the excerpts coming out of the comprehensive plan. I provided page numbers so you can go and look for yourself, but the first page is what I call a summary of the recommendations as they would apply.
Sorry, Wayne, is this, was this submitted to Alex ahead of time?
I just submitted it.
Just this second?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have to get this up in the Dropbox.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
We will
yes.
have to do that.
Okay.
And-
We're not supposed to take documents at the hearing, just so you know. That's
Never
what
heard of that.
Alex.
Never heard of that.
Well, the board has a submission policy where they ask that materials be submitted in advance so that the board
No, I
members and the
understand,
public.
but in the case, I think I have the right to submit any evidence at a hearing, but nonetheless,
Yeah,
the fact that this is going to be adjourned, I don't expect you to have any response. You're going to get planning board, everybody's review of it. I just wanted this to get you to have something so you could look at it by the next meeting.
All good.
Okay, so the summary here, comprehensive plan did a enormous review of development in the village center. And they took a village resident input, made professional planning, and basically I summarize what you see in that comprehensive plan. So the first one is respect to the commercial downtown area. The village center is currently underserving its potential demographic base. Village residents expressed the support for some new development in the village center, provided it is done in a way that is complementary to the historic village character. If any redevelopment were to occur, the most appropriate location would be on the lots fronting Nugent Street and Windmill Lane. Residents also express the need for more things to do in the evenings, such as restaurants, bars, and other entertainment. Residents were supportive of making outdoor dining a permanent feature since COVID, recognizing its potential to activate public space, improve downtown vibrancy, and support local business. Apart from regulatory changes, in other words, the village board changing the code, the village, which includes this board and the planning board, should support physical improvements to the public realm as well as investments by private business to outdoor dining in an attractive and uniform way. Furthermore, the master comprehensive plan goes on and says, with respect to looking at parking variances. And I thought this was very interesting because clearly on some days you can't find a place to park and you would say, wait a minute, we're underserved. But actually the comprehensive plan and the planner said, while the public parking spaces adequately serve the business area, many of the off-street parking areas, both municipal and privately owned along West Main Street and behind Job's Lane, are rarely fully utilized. The issue is less that of providing even more parking than on better using the existing spaces. Zoning regulations should be as flexible as possible in the downtown area and should encourage in lieu fees as an alternative to building private and exclusive parking areas on each parcel. Many of the existing commercial buildings do not currently provide their own off-street parking like this one. And for new buildings, the village is to consider allowing developer to pay in lieu fee for parking if it's near a public parking lot, and we're actually adjacent. One of the other things is I mentioned, I forgot to put in here, one of the other things is to recognize shared parking and the difference in the parking demand based on peak periods, which is something, so what we have done is we've also have gone and tried to find out how this village has treated all the restaurants in the village. And what we found is what we've requested in all the variances, if we can go into some detail, is the treatment of all these other restaurants. What we're asking for would be consistent with that treatment. One of the things that Alex mentioned that, interestingly, the special exception standards, unlike any other special exception standards, require, actually state that the use expires every January 1st.
For outdoor dining.
For outdoor dining.
Yep.
So the real question is, what does that mean? Do I have to come back to this board every year and go through the same proof? It's not just a monitoring. It's not clear what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And what the interesting thing is, other applications, other restaurants haven't had to do that, despite their conditions or otherwise.
Is that a fact?
We've seen that on a couple cases. So I'm not trying to point fingers at anybody, but we're just trying to be consistent. If it was just merely a monitoring, we're happy with that. In fact, the fire marshal will be there every year. At the very least, he has to do an inspection if he's not there more often. We're okay with that. It's a public facility. He can come in anytime and check and monitor. We're okay with the monitoring, but that section of the code is rather strange. And interestingly, this whole outdoor dining part it's rarely happening. There's no new restaurants in the village. They're all pre-existing. They're all within public places, which if you looked at the special exception standards, you can't be within 500 feet of the park. At one park, you can't have a restaurant within 500 feet of the park. You can't have it within 500 feet of a church. You can't have it 500 feet of a public building. So every restaurant in the village is non-conforming in that respect right from the get-go. So one of these things, I go back to the comprehensive plan, if you really want to encourage these things, is go back and revisit these things and make it, if you really truly want to encourage these things. Now, no matter what we do, we're stuck with the health department. Until we get sewers in the village, we're stuck. And what this application is, as your planner has indicated, a balance. What we're trying to balance is a way to achieve a reasonable expansion. Unfortunately, we have to give up the 2 apartments. One of the things my client didn't want to do is workforce housing, 2 apartments. But the only way he can get seating to make his business work is by giving up the apartments. His hope is that in the future, when sewers are back, we'll go do the apartments back.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
So,
Are those formalized workforce housing apartments right now?
No, but it's generally, that's what he has used them for. That's what it was been used for. Employees of the restaurant have resided there. Now, historically, I also understand there's been other people that have rented, but there has been restaurant employees there. So it's an opportunity, you know, and that's something I didn't point out, but it's throughout the comprehensive plan update, is to encourage that kind of housing. But it's dead on arrival until we get sewers. So, and it all comes back to this balancing with the health department. So we're at a point where we believe we can do something and meet the health department standards, which, by the way, if we don't do this, you don't have an upgrade of the septic system. This current septic system continues to leak into the groundwater, and we're still no further ahead when we started looking at sewers 15, 20 years ago. So,
No, it's been painfully slow. I don't think we can view this application as if we're going to have a sewer
No,
in the
we're not
next
asking
5 or
you to.
10 years. No, I know. I just want, make sure we're on the same page
unfortunately,
there.
we can't do that.
Yeah.
We recognize that we can't do that, so we got to take it with, the standards as they are today, assuming that the health, sewers never occur. That being said, we're just trying to lay out how, where, and how this design has come about. And
Got
it
it.
has been, as you can, a struggle trying to meet everybody's standards.
No, you're
And
laying it
most
out.
importantly, no matter what, as far as timing, who goes first?
Yeah.
Traditionally, the health department wanted to approve as soon as somebody identified, seeker, I need a village seeker determination. Sometimes they say, we're not going to approve anything until you receive all your variances from the village. Luckily, they haven't said that here.
Mhm.
So maybe we can get some input. But so chicken and the egg, usually the health department is the last one. The zoning board usually gives variances. We get site plan approval, but we can't get a building permit without health department in hand.
Mhm.
So hopefully we'll get more input. Hopefully it's an approval. But if we don't, we'll be back to at least express where we are with the health department at the next meeting. But at this point, unless you have further questions, I have nothing, knowing that you have to adjourn this, and hopefully we get an answer from the planning board. And unless there's somebody like Mr. Bennett who wants to oppose this.
So your priority right now is to get an agency to be a lead board to be a lead board, if you will,
Mhm.
make these calls so you can run, not walk to the health department, get that approved so you can then get to.
Yeah, because I think, as your planner has indicated, is, she has questions whether the health department will approve it. We want to dispel those and make sure the health department is satisfied and can approve it. And
Now,
it's important. I think
assume-
everything else flows from that.
Assume we cede our, responsibility in the sector over to the planning board. Planning board goes forward. Do these people have to come back to us after that?
Well, I will
Before
say
it goes back out to
the
people?
planning board typically wouldn't approve a site plan if it needs special exception and variances, because the project can't be built without the special exception and variances. So the planning board typically starts the process for site plan review, and they've been to the planning board, they've started that process. The planning board typically does SECRA for that reason. But usually while that process is pending, they'll make application to this board for relief that's needed, and then go back
So
to
we're
the...
not ceding over our responsibility to approve the variances. They
No,
still have to
no,
have.
absolutely
responsibility.
not.
Yes,
Only
So it goes
the
from here to them
environmental
and back
review.
to us.
Yes, and I should mention, regardless of what the health department approves, this board still has jurisdiction over the restaurant use, the outdoor dining use, all of the variances requested, as well as the parking waiver. So that's
Right.
something that
It's a
this
little
board
bit
has
of
to
a chicken and the
determine.
egg, though, because we go to planning wants to know if we got health department approval. Health department won't give us approval until we get SECRA from the planning. Your first question was, do we have health department approval? I can't get health department approval without the variance, without the SECRA, without the plan. And so that's the reason we've been trying to get in front of all of the boards, to get somebody to help us move forward. If the health department is really our first egg to break, but we still need planning to do secret, it's kind of we're chasing ourselves in circles.
So let me just ask, that's where I was trying to go.
Yeah.
So if we cede over to the planning board, and if the planning board does what the planning board's going to do, and then if we then see you again and approve variances or disapprove or whatever we do with the variances, then you're done. with the village,
No, then they go back.
and they go back to the health department.
No, they
No.
go to the planning department, back.
Back
Okay,
to
go
the
back
site
to the
plan
plan.
review,
Yeah.
which
That's
I
right,
said,
that's right,
you know,
true.
other than the
True.
2 spaces in the rear, there is an enormous amount of
All right,
work
so
on
then
the
you go
part
back
of
to
the
them for a
site
site
plan
plan review, and once that's done, are you done?
Architectural review.
No ARB. Okay, I'm catching up. All right.
Now, just,
But it's one of those things that, and I could be wrong, but I don't think that planning board usually determines secret until they are done. But they won't be done until we get our variances, correct?
That's
So-
typical.
So how do I get secret from planning if I don't get a variance that says I can actually
Yeah.
build it?
well, the planning board doesn't necessarily, the law requires your agency to make the seeker determination, a negative declaration usually, before you approve an application. And so what Lisa's identifying, the planning board typically may leave it to the end, or even this board leave it to the end. You make your seeker determination, and then you make your determination almost the same time.
Yep.
However, the law allows the planning board or this board to make a seeker determination early. At the earliest possible stage is actually when you are comfortable enough that you have all the information necessary to make that determination. So here, what Lisa's saying is, and I think Alex will understand, when we go back to the planning board at the next meeting, is going to be asking them to make that determination sooner than later, not waiting to the end, because they can't make a determination without this board's action first.
And one of the consequences of deferring to the planning board to be lead agency with this board as an involved agency with input is that this board could make their determination without having to do that environmental review, knowing that the planning board is going to do that environmental review before they make their decision in consideration of your input, so that this board could act.
Can this board write a letter to the planning board recommending that they make the secret decision sooner rather than later?
If you had input on it, potentially. Typically that's something that would come at at the end, but they've also done it where they've made the secret determination as long as they have enough information as they continue going through the site plan engineering details. But they would likely want to have the approvals from this board in hand so that they know that they can have the seating capacity that they're proposing, independent of what the health department, that the village is going to allow the outdoor dining and the restaurant expansion and the
So there
parking.
I need my
and things.
ZBA decision before I can get my planning decision.
I don't think there's.
And that's an admittedly an embarrassingly stupid question.
No such thing.
But what I keep circling in, the plan that keeps circling in my brain is, what am I seating over at the planning commission if they still have to come back to us for all the variances?
What you're seeding
Wait,
is
but we're not-
the environmental review.
Yes.
The
That's
state
it?
law, that's
The,
it.
and I should say the ability to be the lead agency, so as in the one who makes the secret determination. We're saying we're going to let the planning do that on behalf of the village, but you'll still have input into that process.
There's just one, it's the environmental, everything else.
And
is
just
not-
making the final
Special-
determination.
with all the
Special
different-
exemption.
Everything
all
else on
the-
the agenda is still within this board's
You're not
purview.
streamlining
Right, we
anything
haven't
else.
even actually talked about the
No,
variances.
no.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with the process that we seem to be coalescing around?
Yeah, I'm happy to have the planning board be the lead agency for secret and do a coordinated review. I think it's more efficient than having every board do their own review for the village and for the applicant. And the planning board has access to the same experts that you do. And it's more common for a commercial application because they see all commercial applications, whether or not they come to this board.
Okay. Okay. Here's my question. You are asking for a special exemption use for the restaurant, but you are asking for further exemptions from the
Variances.
requirements.
Variances.
Variances.
From some of the standards for
Correct.
outdoor dining standards, not
Okay.
the restaurant.
Okay. So can you
The
talk
restaurant exists, and so there's 4, in addition to the 13 general standards, one of which includes you have to provide parking as required by code, which I believe has been construed if this board determines to provide the waiver and a fee in lieu, that means compliance with that section. That being said, there's 4 specific conditions for a restaurant, and the first one is that 500-foot setback that I talked about.
Sure.
And, this is in the law, there's nothing clear in the village statute, but normally when you have a pre-existing restaurant, I don't need to go back and get approval for that pre-existing.
think-
What's being asked, and
Yeah.
this isn't in the statute either, is that we're expanding the restaurant, and therefore I have to meet the original siting requirements and use conditions to even get the expansion. That being said, it's almost impossible, and every one of the applications on the other restaurants noted the proximity to all the things, but never expressly granted variances or otherwise said anything about
Right.
those standards. But the other ones are no outdoor noise and outdoor speakers and other things that Lisa has mentioned in her letter.
I'm a little more interested in the bar that's technically not allowed,
So
and
the outdoor
seating.
dining, which, by the way, under the state law, you're authorized to grant variances to the special exception standards. So the outdoor dining section of the code has A to K conditions. And one of those is that outdoor dining shall not exceed 50 seats in total. And we're asking for, I believe it's 62, Lisa?
68.
68,
68, it's 68 on the first floor and 10 on the second floor.
right.
So 78,
78 total.
where 50 is allowed.
Right. And
So, okay,
the
so like a 50%.
second one we're asking for
I think Lisa has
is-
those calculations in her memo, if we want to
Yeah,
go through.
Yeah.
they are in the memo.
But just so we put it percentage-wise, it's like 50%.
Right, and there was some
No,
conversation.
the next condition is the number of outdoor seating, to wit, the seating capacity of the outdoor dining shall not exceed 75% of the total number of indoor seats. So in this case, when you compare the numbers and how we're modifying and doing everything as indicated in the notice, we're asking for, rather than 75%, the number is 81.3%. In comparison. The third standard,
Wait,
which
sorry, let me just understand that. How many indoor seats are there right now?
So if you look at the plans that I gave,
87.
so we have two
87.
different portions, right? We have the existing Shippies,
Yep,
which has, and again, it goes, so it's 69 restaurant seats and 14 bar seats. And this is all in my letter.
okay.
Okay. So we have the first floor part of the restaurant, and then we have the proposed event space that's on the second floor. So that event space is proposed to have 22 seats. So the reason when we were talking about the 68 plus the 10, the 68 seats that it's actually 62 seats on the first floor, plus 6 bar seats on the first floor, that's the 68. And then it's taking 10 seats out of the event space in the seasonal time and locating them on a balcony. So that's where all those numbers come into play. So it's 68 on the first floor, outdoor seats, and 10 outdoor seats on the second floor. So it's all a matter of, do you count all of the restaurant seats together, or do you count them separately and say they're half and half? You know what I mean?
Well, let's just do this. Let's just say, what is 75% of
The
the
total thing?
existing seats today?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. All I
There's
can say
total
is that
seating
we're
today.
81.3 is what we're looking for, and 75% is what I could come up with. I mean, I could do the
Well,
math.
there's
So the
87.
existing seats is 87. There's 87, and the proposed is 170. Well, so there were two parts in the plan. I wasn't
What do you
quite
get,
clear.
87?
It was 173, I think, by your calculation, and 174 if based on what was written on it.
Page 2 of the submission says existing restaurant, 78 patrons.
Oh, and the bar seating. So 9 bar seating. So sorry,
No,
total,
existing
I'm counting
nine. Is it
total
9?
seating.
Okay, so
78 plus
if we
9.
said 87 seats
I need your
times
phone.
0.75,
65.
you'd
and
be
a quarter.
allowed 65, but how many are you asking for?
Well,
Up to
on the
78.
first floor, I was asking for 68.
So only 3 more than you're allowed.
On the first
On
floor.
the first floor.
Okay,
And then on the second floor, inside, we have 22.
okay.
And I'm asking to be able to take 10 out of that and put them on the outside in the summer months. So that's like that's less than 50%. So it's a matter of whether you add them together or you don't, right? Like.
Okay, I don't want any gymnastics, okay? I just really want to know how many seats beyond what you are allowed
What season?
are you asking for
So,
today?
so there's, well, one thing is the restaurant seating is changing based on what's proposed. So the numbers in the denial letter, which you should have, and that are reflected on the agenda, are
Okay.
based on what's proposed, which involves the slight change in the number of seats. It's actually some seats coming out of the restaurant and bar seats that are increasing in the restaurant.
Okay.
The number of seats that are allowed outside is measured in two ways. One is the flat cap of 50 seats for any restaurant that's in the code. The other is as a proportion of the indoor. So that's what's capped at 75%, and what they're proposing was determined as 81.3%.
So we're looking for 78 outdoor seats
Okay. Where 50 is allowed.
where 50
Correct.
is allowed.
Okay. So you're asking for over 50% increase.
In
Uh,
that
uh,
element of the code,
okay.
correct.
Does that strike you as substantial?
No.
No? Come on.
Primarily,
You have to be
primarily because again, only 68 of them are on the first floor. The other 10 are on the second floor, which will come out of the indoor seating. So they're not all in one location, and they're not all going to, the second floor is proposed event space.
Mhm.
That's not restaurant seating.
Mhm.
That's a specific party, a specific thing. So those 10 seats to me, which is what puts you in that 50% market, is not going to be used 90% of the time. It's only going to be used when there's an event going on in that space and it happens to be warm out, right? Like, so really what I'm asking for on the first floor is the 68 seats
Mm-hmm.
based against the 69 and 14, 70.
87.
All right, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you can beg to differ. I think what would be very helpful is if you were able to put together some kind of table for us with these percentages, with the seats.
By season.
By season.
Oh my God.
Because, well, I mean, we have a lot of the information here in your letter, but then Alex said some of this is going to change based on bar seating, based on the season. I think it would just help clarify
The code
it.
doesn't seem to make a difference between restaurant seats and bar seats. in
For-
terms
Oh,
of
no,
the
no, no,
dining
that's,
part.
okay, that's
For
what-
this part of the discussion, for the special exception, a seat is a seat. Bar, restaurant are treated the same. Where they start to get a little bit different is how the parking is calculated. So for the purposes of the parking waiver, we care about restaurant versus bar seats because bar seats have a higher
Turnover, yeah.
a higher parking requirement. But for the special exception standards and the caps on seating, we consider bar and
So
restaurant
can we
the
do
same.
summer versus winter versus code? Here's what the code allows.
can do a chart.
Here's what you're gonna be in the
Thanks,
summer.
man.
Yeah.
Here's what you're gonna be in the winter. And that way you'll be able to do your comparison of deviation by season versus the cap, what the code allows. Does that help?
I think that would be
I think
helpful to
so,
everybody.
yeah.
And while I didn't break it down by season, I did do an existing and proposed broken down by use in the memo that arrived late today. So
That's
that
the
might be a
page two?
template for you to add
I
some.
didn't get it, but I would love it.
Yeah, we'll get it to you. And I
I
was only
emailed it
asked-
to you late
is
this
this one?
afternoon, Lisa, so
Oh,
you
did
should,
you?
yeah,
Okay,
so you
but,
should have it.
I
Yeah,
did-
on page 3, I think, of Lisa's memo, you have it, there's a
Okay,
table, there's a table.
Page
I think it's on page 3. It says
Which Lisa?
3191.
Which Lisa?
Lisa,
Lisa.
for H2M,
Oh, wrong.
Not Lisa's logo.
it has the H2M logo in the
Yeah,
letterhead.
yeah, I'll find it. Oh, got
Lisa,
it.
Zaloga,
Yeah, I'm looking at the wrong.
Yes.
make your
Yes.
case to us, please, for allowing an outdoor service bar in an outdoor dining area which is prohibited by special exception.
Well, without throwing.
That's not
So
my,
Lisa, I think you need to show where it is on the plan and how that works.
it can't just be my client wants it.
I wasn't what I was gonna say.
Okay.
So a couple of things. So first of all, The balcony on the second floor overhangs a portion of this outdoor dining, and the bar area, the service bar area that we're talking about, is actually underneath that portion, which is about 50 feet, well, maybe 40 feet from the street frontage, okay? It's a six-person seated bar that we're referring to. If you go and think about the village and look around, although they're not permitted, and I'm not throwing people under the bus, you will find that almost every restaurant that has outdoor dining has a form of a service bar outside. And therefore, I think our conversation with that is based on that it doesn't seem to have been a negative impact on the village in any way, shape, or form, and that it helps the restaurant run, as opposed to the waiters and the waitresses having to come from the inside bar and service all of these people outside. It helps in the flow of the restaurant use.
I mean, they could just have like a pass-through in that wall.
I don't think that's permitted.
Okay, understood. Well, so
Another
look,
round of variances.
the argument though, Lisa and Wayne, the argument that just because everyone else is doing something that's illegal, we should formalize that illegality.
That wasn't
is-
necessarily what I was saying. All I was saying is that I don't think that.
Yes, it was.
No,
That was
I was
exactly
saying,
what
I
you
was
said.
saying, where is the detriment? Where is the detriment to
Doesn't
the
hurt the character of the
community
neighborhood.
in terms of having an outdoor service bar? What, the part of the code that says that you shouldn't have outdoor music and outdoor speakers and things. Those, you can see how that has an effect on the neighbors and all of those things. I don't see the detriment in having an outdoor service bar, and there's definitely a benefit to the restaurant and the use of the restaurant.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not our responsibility to prove a detriment, right? It's just in the code that it's disallowed. And I don't know that you can make I guess make the case that you need it.
We'll look into it.
Okay, so then, okay, so I understand, and I understand that not everyone is coming in annually for their renewal, but again, that's a requirement. Why should we waive that
Well,
requirement?
interestingly, is normally conditions are performance standards. We have to do something to show that we're entitled to that use.
Sure.
That is not a performance standard. That's a procedural issue and it's an expiration. So it's contrary to the other section of the code that once you're approved special exception, I go get a CO, then what? No, I got a CO that allows all this, and then what are you gonna do, January 1st the next year? Is it no longer valid?
Okay.
So it's just an odd requirement there. So it's not something to perform or not perform. It's a future activity that this, it's like you're giving me a temporary approval. If I got this approval in December, I got a CO in December, I'm no longer valid on January 1st? It's very odd, and so all we were asking for is not to eliminate it, just make it a 5-year requirement. We'd be happy, to come back, but also maybe clarify what you're going to do in that review.
I think it's important to understand the intent of that annual re-up.
I agree.
I think
Right.
it's to monitor something, but
Yeah.
I don't think they thought through how that works. So, because what's
Monitor the
missing
numbers.
here is, do I have to come back,
Violations.
full application now?
It's not a public hearing. From
What do you mean?
my understanding of, and I believe
How
it's
is it
written.
not?
I believe it's written somewhere else in the code that when you come back for a renewal, it doesn't require a public hearing. From what I understand, typically how it's been treated in the past is that the board would see if the application was still in compliance with the code, with the conditions, that there hadn't been history of complaints or violations cited against the property. It's a little bit akin to how the board regulates the sidewalk dining on village property, which those are annual licenses that expire and get reapplied each year.
It's an opportunity to revisit and see whether or not there's been tons of people and crowds and noise and
Blocking the
all that kind of
sidewalk.
That
stuff.
seems to be the intent. It is a little bit unique to this special exception. Other special exceptions don't have necessarily that same type of expirations system built in.
So I was kind of thinking of the sidewalk dining as the same thing, but it's not, right?
That's
We're
a
thinking
separate process,
okay, so
because
we're
that's
thinking about
village-owned
outdoor
property.
dining, like the restaurant by the train station has behind it.
Yeah,
Who else?
there's a couple of different buckets of outdoor dining. The ones that happen on village-owned property on the sidewalk, that's a temporary license that the village grants those. Those don't get health department approval because they're only permitted to relocate existing seats temporarily, and those do expire annually. They have to be removed in inclement weather and things like that. This is a different type of application because it's on private property. It includes health department and site plan review. There are examples of restaurants in the village that do have outdoor dining built into their CEO that predate this outdoor dining code, which was written by the trustees and adopted by the trustees in 1999. So there are examples of people that are grandfathered in with certain aspects of outdoor seating that predate this code. And as you know, there's examples that are doing it without permits.
I mean,
Okay.
I spent a lot of time reviewing all the variances, so you're right, the T-Bar has it, the Social Club
T-bar.
has it,
Mhm.
La Parmigiana has an outdoor tent. Barristers, the back of Barristers actually, well, it's not Barristers.
Charlot.
Les Charlot has it. You know, obviously the Public House has it. All of those, Bamboo, which was Buckley's 100 years ago.
Okay.
They all have, and they all actually got variances for outdoor dining. And in every one of those variances, it says that it was a temporary thing and they were supposed to come back every year.
Okay.
And the last thing that I saw anybody come back from was 1998. I haven't seen that anybody came back,
Yeah.
has come back for any of these, and those were all, they were prior to the code, but they actually had all gotten variances, and all those variances said that they were supposed to come back, and I haven't seen any of them come back. And they
All right.
all actually also have
Understood.
outdoor
I think
service bars.
in and of itself, asking for outdoor dining doesn't seem to be something that is out of character with the village, right? Since so many, we just rattled off every restaurant in town that has it.
Right.
I just wonder, why can't you just comply with the seating requirements?
The goal is, I mean, if you look at the size of the space and you actually took into account the fire marshal's calculations, we could actually have more seating than what we're asking for. So our
By the
calculation.
fire marshal's calculations.
By the fire marshal's
Square
calculations.
footage per person.
Right. So our calculations we come to these calculations by the health department standards. That's what's our limiting factor as it is. You know, the restaurant inside, it's usually very busy, and so the goal is to take some of those people and be able to move them outside, and that's, you know, and again, if you look at, if I pull out all the ZBA variances, those numbers are not odd in keeping with the character of the village restaurants in any way, shape, or form.
It's also a function of the space as you know, you got two buildings and it's that space. At what point are you going to invest and make all these improvements? Like you said, or could we do a lesser number? But then at some point, are you gonna do more because the space is there? It's that function, and it's something that makes it this reasonable and you know, allows our client to get a proper return on his investment on the property, as well as make the restaurant profitable. And just as I mentioned in the comp plan, this isn't an area of the village that is, you know, the forgotten corner.
I completely agree. I love the comprehensive plan. Let's just not conflate asking for outdoor dining with asking for all this other stuff, right? Like, I can envision a scenario where this outdoor pavilion is unbuilt. So why not just make it smaller, comply with the seating requirements, comply with the fire marshal's spatial requirements, and call it a day.
I mean, I wouldn't have to necessarily make it smaller, I would just have to put less seats in, but, I mean, and then he's not paying for all that parking, which, of
Well,
course,
you seem to be suggesting that the space would seem empty if there were fewer seats.
I'm not, that's not necessarily what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that the interior of the bar, the interior of the space where the restaurant currently is, gets very crowded and at times feels very tight. So having the overflow ability to move them outside is the goal. And, you know, that number is what we have backed into and what we feel would make the restaurant work better. How we come to that number and that calculation, I guess we can look at and try and explain to you. But, you know, in terms of the event space on the second floor, the 22 seats up there, you know, having a few two-person tables outside, you know, it's a balcony. Having 10 seats outside, taking 10 out of the 22 that's already inside, it didn't seem like it was a huge ask, you know. That's less than 50%, and we're taking them from the inside space and moving them out. Those are not additional 10 seats. So that's where I kind of come to those seats, even though I'm asking for the ability to put them outside, you're counting those 10 seats against me in my calculation to get, you know, saying I'm almost 75% or over
Yeah.
70. You know, you're using those 10 seats against me, but they're technically indoor seats that I'm going to move outside. They're not additional seats, which is what this 68 seats is.
Right. I guess
So,
I'm trying to.
so it's not really, the numbers are slightly skewed against us in terms of a percentage number, right?
But that's just what it is, right? Like, no one's using anything against you
No,
necessarily.
I don't mean they're using it against me, but I mean, you know, it depends on, and again, that would go to an interpretation as to those 10 seats. If I'm taking them from the inside, are they really counting against me on the restaurant? They're not part of the restaurant seating. I'm not sure why those 10 seats count against me. And then that reduces my number significantly, and it reduces my percentage down. I don't even need that 75% number then. I'm not
Right.
asking for that variance because I'm below that then. So, you know, that's an interpretation of how you know, we interpreted it in the worst case scenario against us,
Mhm.
so that we could get in front of the board and not have a problem. But I'm not sure that that's the correct, I think it's actually less than that. That's just my interpretation, though.
I guess I'm just trying to understand. I always try to think about, like, what was the conversation between the homeowner, the business owner, and their architect and their attorney that said, okay, this is worth me fighting for? And this one just seems to be like you've just put so many roadblocks in front of yourselves. The site, to me, looks completely overdeveloped. And I just wonder, like, what really that conversation was where you told your client, look, we're going to need a variance for this. And he just said, what? I don't care? Like,
Well, I mean, in terms of overdeveloped, you know, part of the village business setbacks and zoning and everything else kind of semi-requires that you're supposed to go property line to property line. I think if you look at, you know, the public house, they're using all of their property. I don't think there's any village business property that really isn't, you know, taking care of all, you know, taking over the entire lot. We actually probably have more space in the back of our property than most of them do. So I'm not really sure that overdeveloping the property would be in the scheme of looking at the village.
well, I think any application that requires this many variances points to overdevelopment.
Again, I mean, you know, 75% to 81.3%, it didn't seem like it was a lot, but I mean, we can certainly look at it.
All right. I'm disappointed that your owner isn't here today.
He was going to be on Zoom. He's actually in Mexico, because he is speaking at a conference. But he wanted to be here, it just didn't work out.
Okay.
Just to clarify on the ratio, the numbers, how we got to that 81.3% assumes that those 10 seats are outside on the balcony, and the inside has been reduced to only 12 seats, because that's the maximum outdoor seating that you're asking for. So the reason why those 10 seats are in the numerator, they can't be in the numerator and the denominator. That's why that's
Right, but those 10 seats are going against the restaurant. In other words, if you were to look at it as a restaurant and the outdoor dining for the restaurant, and then the event space and the outdoor dining for the event space, they'd be two different numbers, and you would be at less than the percentage on both of them.
I think we're totaling both floors together
Correct.
and addressing this as one
Correct.
restaurant/bar/tavern,
Right.
rather than doing it floor by floor.
Right, but again, like the event space is not restaurant dining per se. It's will be used differently.
Yeah, that's a distinction that doesn't exist in our code. So a seat in a restaurant is a restaurant seat. I understand that it's on the second floor, and you're saying it's not going to be used year round. That's not a category that's written into our code. But I understand what you're saying.
Final thoughts?
We're not voting now.
No,
Well-
but give us your impressions.
And also, we're going to open this to public comment, and then we probably should revisit the question about secret, because I don't know if we got a determination there.
Okay.
I get back to, we want to develop this area of town. I know that's not necessarily politically the right thing to say, but we do want to develop this area
No,
of town.
it's politically okay. It's
We
in the
have-
comprehensive plan.
We have the space. They don't have neighbors. Rotations is the only neighbor. So they have the space. It's within the fire code. It's within their health code, and it follows the comprehensive plan. It would help the community. It would give people outdoor space to go to. It would give people a relief from the invalid. I've been to the restaurant. It is beyond packed on the inside. It's actually dangerous in the bar area. If there's ever a fire, forget about it. I'm kidding, but it's very, very packed.
We have a sprinkler.
This would be good. So I don't view this as a bad thing, I'm gonna be honest with you. I really don't view it as a bad thing and evil.
Okay.
I think it is in furtherance of the plan. It's in a unique location that can handle that. It's not gonna disturb neighbors. It's got a fire department across the street, a bike shop next door, and a parking lot next door. Who's gonna complain, right? And it's safe in terms of the code and the health and all that. So it doesn't provoke my concerns at the level of yours, I must admit.
Okay.
I would
Do
apologize.
you, is there any concern on your part about this application opening the door for others?
Thank you.
No, because I think you have to take each one on their merits, and this is a unique situation with the restaurant standing there all by itself on the end of town with a fire department, a parking lot, and a bike shop. It's not like it's, next to Hildress. It's not like it's 75 Main, where, it would get pretty crowded and pretty crazy. So I think it's in a unique situation by luck, frankly, of 65 years or whatever of history. But so I'm not too worried about the present, because no one else is going to be able to line up the factors here. But applying the 5 factors to this at first blush,
I don't think we apply
reserving my rights.
5 factors.
The 5 factors apply to
That's
the
true.
variances,
Yeah.
and the special exception criteria apply to the special exception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right, if you're looking at the
Variances.
variance from that standard, it's just like a variance from any other zoning provision. You would apply the 5
Right,
criteria.
so I'm talking about the seats and things like that. So, yeah.
Okay.
But again, I reserve my right. That's just your initial reaction.
No,
That's
just
initial
wait. You are
reaction.
not, no, you didn't vote in blood yet. Linda, what do you think?
I agree totally with what Carol said.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Joyce?
I have some concerns, and I mean, it's a little bit nuanced, probably more nuanced than what Carol and Linda have expressed, but I do think that there is this sense in the village master plan about developing that area of the village. When I'm sitting here, I'm thinking that I'm very concerned about the number of variances that are required to make this proposal possible. am also thinking about how we have this great, fantastic new movie theater. I think one of the reasons why it's important for the planning board to take the lead in coordinating this process is that there's also some possible proposal for an outdoor restaurant there, in conjunction with the movie theater. So I think that that's something that needs to be looked at sort of in this coordinating process. I think in like nuts and bolts, my two major concerns are the septic issue, which I think is way overly already taxed in the village. And and I was going to say parking, although it seems like I do know that that lot here is frequently not to capacity. So the parking is less of a concern to me, but the septic issue too. So that's kind of where I stand on it. I think there's a way that this could be achieved, but like without having to ask for all these variances.
I agree with that as well. Okay.
Okay.
Is there anyone in the Zoom with their hand raised? No? Okay. I think what would be helpful for me, at least, is when you guys come back, let's talk about the individual variance requests really in the context of the 5 points.
Absolutely. Like
and
I
we'll
said
just
at the
go-
beginning, I was just brought on board, and
Yeah, no.
the
It's-
expectation is you would have this introduction tonight. and
I
then
think
we
this is
can
a
address this.
fruitful first hearing,
Mhm.
for sure. And I appreciate you coming on at late notice, Wayne. So, but just was always helpful to us is to really be able to walk through the 5
Yeah, very
points
helpful.
on that.
Yeah,
Um,
this is a lot, so it was helpful.
Mhm.
Okay, we kind of took a straw poll before. It seemed to be 3-1 to go to the planning board for SECRA. I think that while we are interested in neighborhood impact on specific variance requests, the planning board has more of a whole village view on that. So, how do we formalize that, Alex?
You agree to coordinated review and defer to the planning board to serve as lead agency.
Okay, we do that.
And you would still be able to comment.
Okay. In that case.
By motion.
By motion? Okay, I move to do that.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Can I just ask, maybe appended to that, Alex, is the section in the special exception procedures that actually requires this board not to act until you get the planning board's recommendations, that you could ask the planning board to forward their recommendations to the zoning board?
I'll have to double check that provision of the code, because I hadn't anticipated that the zoning board would need that in this case.
Well, that's what the code says.
Okay.
So,
Well,
and
we'll-
that, normally, if I was the zoning board, I would want to know if there were any planning issues that should be taken into account.
Yeah, I mean, and the zoning board also has full access to the site plan application as well, and there's several memos that Lisa Rickmers wrote to that board as well.
Anyway.
So you have a full overview of all the application.
Okay. Shall we adjourn this to the next hearing?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I move to adjourn the next hearing.
Second?
Second?
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 When is that?
April
24th.
24th.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
And Lisa, thank you.
Thank
You're off the hook for the night. Appreciate it. We're gonna backtrack a little bit. Thank you for everyone's patience. Okay, Alex, 3180, they have already formally adjourned, so we.
Well, this board has adjourned that application to it at that date, giving them a deadline to respond. To date, I haven't heard a respond. I understand they've reached out to some of the building clerks to ask questions about resubmitting. And they had shared some preliminary information with me prior to the last meeting, but I have still not heard from them.
Okay.
But I did let them know that if they weren't responsive by the board's date, that the board could dismiss the case without prejudice, which
Okay.
means that it would be dismissed from the calendar, and the planning board would probably have to do the same.
Okay. Thank you, Alex.
Sure.
Okay, 3188, 275 Ox Pasture. That's you, right?
It's me, but could you jump one and come back to me after that one?
Sure, okay.
Thank you.
Let's do, okay. Alex, 3192, 57 Old Town Road. You have a note that this application has been re-advertised.
Yes, so Lucy's here for this application. It was re-advertised to reflect a change in the variance. There was a slight increase in one of the requests that the board had discussed when you first heard this application
Okay.
about moving a garage further from the neighbor but closer to the street. That triggered it to be re-advertised, which was
Okay.
done. We have affidavits on file.
Okay.
So Lucy's here to continue
Okay.
with this revised version of the application.
Hi, Lucy. All of your houses need variances. No? Yes?
Very few.
Very few.
But all the ones that come here do.
Yes.
But all of your ones
Lucy's at the
in
ARB a
Southampton
lot
Village
for other
do.
cases.
I'm much more on the ARB, much more.
Okay, okay.
So, Ciulio Architect, I'm the agent for 57 Old Town. And last time, the board concern is that we have multiple variances. This one that we asked for 10 feet setback instead of 12 for the garage. We moved it forward, so it's 12 from the rear to the neighbor to the north, and then 12 to the neighbor to the west. So that we eliminate one variance, but we actually increased the variance that we asked for the garage in the front.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of 32.71 to be 30.71, and that's when we actually have to re-advertise because it gets more.
Mhm.
And that is one of the changes. The other one changes is the one in the little bump out in the front, and we decided to move the house more close to the Old Town Road, so we actually decreased the amount of existing variance from 0.92 to 0.51 on one side, and from 1.44 to 1.04 on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
I have done many new houses that the building department does allow me to use existing encroachment. Even if it's new, completely knocked down, they do allow me. And we really reduced quite a bit, and then we further reduced it by moving it more to close town, to Old Town. And I hope the board is okay with this little tiny request, and which actually is I've been used it in the past. That was not really I never have to come when I use existing encroachment.
Okay. The neighbors have a lot to say about this application.
They're not here anymore, right?
Well, their letter is still here.
He's still here?
Yep.
Yeah, I think it was actually their suggestion that we move a little bit more towards the Old Town, so we clear their backyard more.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually really is the smaller bump variance for the bump out is actually a byproduct of their request, because they think that the house will block the sunlight to their house, which is about here, and we move it to the front, and so we have more for their lighting, and then we did not push the house closer to them. We only move it towards Old Town.
Okay. Your client wrote a letter as well.
The new letter?
Well,
No, I
it's
think
from
all those
November
letters-
17th. It's the old letter.
Yeah, also from January 14th meeting, I think.
Yep. Okay.
And then I believe I showed this to the neighbor. She was fine with it. I didn't know if she wrote a new letter or not. Did she write a new
No,
letter?
it's her old letter from
Yeah,
November
it's an old
17th.
letter. She was fine with this new
This one from
layout.
January 13th, the letter.
The first meeting we had is January 14th.
And there's a letter on January 13th from residents of 49.
Right, the
49 Old
neighbors.
Town.
The
Yeah,
neighbors.
that's the
Yeah,
neighbor.
But yeah, I'm talking about the letter from the homeowner.
Oh.
So I have to say, I don't know if she fully understands a variance request and the 5 points that she needs to satisfy. I was a little underwhelmed by her reasoning for needing this variance, so I'm gonna put it to you. Can we just run down the 5 points and you make your case for the variances very specifically?
Okay, so I believe I wrote it. I was like, oh, I'll put out the spot to talk about this.
Well, is the variance self-created?
No, it is a very narrow lot. You can see it's only 66 feet here. So if we're gonna not have variance, we would not be able to do the garage at all. And then for the swimming pool, the same situation.
So, okay, let's pause on that. Maybe you can't have a garage. The code says you can't put the garage there.
So, well, I mean, everybody should have a garage, and it is really good for the neighborhood that we don't see so many cars parked in the front yard, right? So, we have a neighbors in the neighborhood that has the attached garage, because attached garage can be like 30 feet from the front yard. We are detached garage with 30 feet, and then we have 91 bellows, and we have 48 bellows, and they are attached garage that's closer to the street than we are as a detached garage. And the detached garage doesn't have the second floor over it. It's only 16 feet high, and I think we are not asking for too much. It doesn't have adverse effect on the neighborhood, and it's reasonable to have 2-car garage, and we have people in the neighborhood has attached garage that closer to the street. I think this one is actually detached garage. 48 bellows is a detached garage. Is 26.7 feet to the street.
Do you think the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method feasible? Some other feasible method?
I don't think so, because really we have it's a corner lot from Old Town to Bellows. We have to be certain amount of space away from the corner in order to do this garage, and then this is really the only spot to do the detached garage. Okay.
Why can't it be an attached garage in the back of the house?
This is if you do an attached garage, you cannot do it like near the street. It has to be like in the middle of the house. In the middle of the house, you have a garage here. It's not possible for them to even have a living room.
So I'll sort of summarize this. I don't think that an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood. It's a corner lot. I don't think that they can achieve the benefit in another way. It's very thin on Old Town Road. I'm happy that Lucy was able to move it off the neighbor's property by a foot or so. I don't think it's substantial relative to certainly some of the other things we've seen tonight. And also when I compare it to some of the other applications that we've granted for pools and garages. And self-created, of course, every variance request is self-created, but we know that's the least of the 5 points. So I'm inclined to grant this variance, pending your guys' agreement.
I'll also add that they don't have the gross floor area for an attached garage.
No, that's true.
Which would count more
That's true.
than the detached garage.
Yeah.
The detached garages have a greater allowance because they're preferred in the code.
Linda, what do you think?
I agree with you. Your summary is exactly what I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so I'll move to short form approve the request. I have a second?
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Thank you so much for
No
this
more
summary.
variance requests, Lucy.
Oh.
I try not to come.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. All right, that was 57 Old Town. Okay, 3194-575 Hampton Road. Applicant requests an adjournment. That's fine with me. I'll motion to adjourn till April 24th.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you, Alex. Okay, 3196-52 First Neck Lane.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Bennett. My firm is Bennett Reed.
John, thank you for your patience tonight.
Oh, no, that's enough. I was grimacing. It was not very polite of me. I was just frustrated.
I did not
It was
notice.
interesting, though. Oh, that's good. Oh, so I shouldn't have said anything then.
Wait, if you want to give an opinion on any other cases, you should submit a letter.
They make a great smash burger. What can I tell you?
They do. And Caesar chicken salad.
What? So, this is Debbie Hurst's house on First Neck Lane, and she also controls the parcel behind it. It's probably best to see it right here.
I think you're going to face that towards you, John.
Huh?
I think if you face that towards you, we'll pick it up on the screen better.
If I do what?
If you face the plan towards you rather than the board.
Really? Oh, ARB is always telling me to put it the other way. So.
Yeah, it's been a little confusing.
And then, I don't really consider this, a late hit on handouts, but I just put it in a tax map of the area for everyone to look at it, because it's part of the, so I have copies of the tax map. A portion of the tax map of the area. Thank you. And what I tried to do, and I should say I tried to do it. I didn't
Thanks,
do it.
John.
I didn't do it. Somebody else in my office wrote on
Thank
it.
you.
Because if it was me, you wouldn't be able to understand.
John, could I take for Tom and Linda?
Huh?
Can I take for Tom and Linda? So I'll give it to
What do
them
you want to do?
for the board members that
Two
are
extra
here.
copies.
2 more copies.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you, Alex. I
That's all right.
apologize.
Thank you.
So, this is right where the 3-acre zone starts. It starts a little bit the 3-acre zone starts, there's a row of houses on the south side of Culver that butt up, and the 3-acre zone starts just underneath that 3-acre zone. So we're just into the 3-acre zone. It's sort of gerrymandered into the 3-acre zone. So what my client wants to do is to take, she wants to take, hold on a second here. She wants to take, I don't want to give you the wrong thing. She wants to take 26,277 square feet from this flag lot, which is just behind town-owned property that fronts on Lake Agawam, and add it to her house parcel. And that's the benefit. So the benefit she seeks is to make this lot, her house lot, less non-conforming. She'll make this, we'll make this flag lot a little less conforming. That's the trade-off. But even when you take the flagpole portion out as a result of a village code amendment about, let me think, about 12, 13, 14 years ago, maybe a little bit more, they took out the flag portion for the flagpole and also made you had to have a little bit larger for a flag lot in a zone. But this lot will still remain 120,000 square feet, which is the regular minimum size for a lot in the 3-acre zone. It's a very, very large lot. And it's interestingly because it's sort of a strangely shaped lot, the way it is now. So this, from a planning point of view, we think makes a lot more sense. This is the only way that the benefit which the applicant requests, which is to transfer about 20,000 square feet or so, plus or minus, from this large lot that she controls to her house lot. It's the only way we can do it is via a variance because of this about 12, 13, 14-year-old rule on the creation, on how much square footage flag lots have to have, as opposed to a regular lot in the 3-acre zone, which would just be 120,000 square feet. And again, we're just at the start of the 3-acre zone. So what's the most important thing that you look at on these applications? And if you look at the commentary, Terry Rice's commentaries to the village law and the town law, it's the character of the neighborhood. That's why I wanted you to look at this tax map. And what you'll see is that other than the 3-acre lots on this, the subdivision of which this is one lot is one of the constituent members, this subdivision that fronts along the east side, west side of Pond Lane. It's hard to find that many conforming lots other than the Lake Agawam lots. This is an area that is rife with non-conforming lots in the 3-acre zone. Clearly, what happened when I spoke to Dave Amelita about this many years ago, in the McCruskey-Reuter early 80s plan. What happened was they just wanted to make this area 3-acre zone so there couldn't be further subdivided. That was the whole concept, even though there are so many non-conforming lots in this area. So what that suggests is the reduction of this lot by a mere 20,000 square feet will have no impact on the character of the neighborhood, and it'll again reduce the nonconformity of Ms. Hurst's building lot. So we don't see how it'll have any undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood because of the fact that the 3-acre requirement is more honored in the breach than in adherence in this neighborhood. We're not asking for any density, and that's very significant. We're not asking for the increase of any density in this. You'll have a 1-acre lot that is more conforming, albeit still not conforming. It'll be more conforming than the existing 40,000 square feet. This will be a 60,000 square feet lot as opposed to a 40,000 square feet lot, and you're shaving a little bit off this 3-acre lot, making it more commonsensical in terms of design, and doing no violence whatsoever to the character of the neighborhood or the density in the area. It's really a rather minor ask. Somebody might say, oh, well, you're making this lot non-conforming, but you're making this lot much more conforming, and again, not doing any violence to the neighborhood. It's the only way to achieve the variance. It's not substantial. We're only shaving maybe 15% or so off this large 3-acre lot. It's interesting to note in terms of impact on the character of the neighborhood as well. What are the lots that border the 3-acre lot? As you can see on the tax map, they're both owned by the town of Southampton. There was some talk, I think that Mr. Paulson owns the lot to the south. There was some talk about that being deeded to the town of Southampton, but I think that fell apart with the issue on Pond Lane and not closing that down.
That's lot 5212?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, 5212, because that's the Sherrill house, correct me, I think so, at 529.
Mm-hmm.
That was originally Betsy and
Steve, I think.
Virgil Sherrill's house, and now it's Steve Sherrill's house. So again, there are a lot of nonconformities here. I just, I don't, density increase, a more commonsensical lot. Zoning should, from a planning point of view, try to do this. Yes, making this lot somewhat, a little bit non-conforming, but making this lot, by adding the 20,000 square feet, adding a third to it, making it conforming. I also looked in terms of what could happen here. I took a look at this lot. Any development in terms of, changing the streetscape, any development in this, in the Hearst existing residence, it would be hard to do anything other than behind the house, thus not changing the streetscape from First Neck Lane. Why do I say that? The property holds to the north merely a 20-foot side yard. It's obviously a pre-existing non-conforming lot, and when you're supposed to be 35. But remember, you have to have a combined side yard of 60 in this zone. The pool's already at 35, so you'd have to, let me think, I'm sorry, combined side yard of 80. So you'd have to make which essentially gives you a 60-foot side yard to the south. It comes in almost into where the brick patio is. See what I'm saying? You're holding 20 here, okay? And then since you have to hold a combined 80, this has to be 60. So the development, unless you're gonna totally redevelop this property and take the pool out, and it's sort of a grand old house, any sort of development is gonna be here. She primarily wants this for a larger backyard. But, you know, never say never. I'm just thinking from practicality, what's gonna happen here is any development is gonna have to be behind here and respect this side yard, because your side yard here at 20, with the total side yard requirement of 80, essentially kicks your house over here. So I don't think you're gonna see much possibility for any impact on the sense of place as you drive down Meadow Lane. This is really sort of difficult property to utilize for this lot. Really, what do you do with it? It just makes a lot of sense. It either makes sense to you or it doesn't. To me, it makes, from a planning point of view and a reasonableness point of view and a character of the neighborhood point of view, and making this lot more usable makes more sense. There was some comment about, oh, you know, you're creating a nonconformity, but you're decreasing the other nonconformity. And the code, I think it's I can sort of see it in my mind's eye. It's 116, I think 4L or something like that. Talks about one of the purposes of the code is to slowly decrease nonconforming uses. Doesn't say anything about nonconforming lots. This would be the creation by a little bit of a nonconformity here, but decreasing the nonconformity there.
Let me make sure I understood something that you said.
Mm-hmm.
Lot 2.
No. Yeah, that's the
100, the larger
big
lot.
one. That's the large one, yeah.
Currently conforming 155,000 plus or minus square feet, where 150 is the minimum required.
Because it's a flag lot.
Yeah, let me get to my question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Did you say that were this not a flag lot, the minimum requirement would be 120,000?
It's 3 acres, yeah, exactly.
So if this were like abutting First Neck Lane,
Exactly.
it would be 120.
Exactly.
Alex, that's
Yeah,
accurate.
that's right. Yeah, there'd be no deduction of the flagpole, and it would meet the minimum lot size, which is 120,000 square feet, and that's what's proposed, minus the flagpole.
Yeah, we kept it at that, so
Okay.
that conceptually it would be, but for the fact that it's a flag
And
lot, a
what
conforming lot.
will be its square footage once the parcel is taken away?
It's right here on the map.
Okay.
And for zoning purposes, that's 120,000, because we don't count the pole.
Yeah, oh, it's a, yeah, that's
Oh, yeah.
exactly right.
Okay, so
Like
it
builder's
would
acre.
be,
That's right, excluding the pole, it's 120.
Yeah.
So,
it would be conforming if it were
but
not
for
a
the
flag
it was a
lot.
flag lot.
Right.
So we're taking 26,277 square feet from the large parcel and adding that to 26,277 square feet to the small parcel. That will become, will obviously reduce the degree of area nonconformity on the small parcel. It's now about 40, we're gonna make it 60.
And forgive me if this was already mentioned, this is pending before the planning board for that lot line amendment, pending the outcome of this variance
Well,
request.
they can't do it without
Yep.
you.
Yep,
But
but
it still
they-
goes to them,
Yep,
they've got to
th-
formalize it.
Yep, they've made that application already, it's on their calendar.
Have to
It's
go to the
just,
health department as
Yep.
well. Any sort of, in the old days, you could transfer lot lines, for the old days, you could transfer lot lines without going to the planning board, without going to the health department, as long as you weren't creating a new buildable lot, but now you have to go to them. So we have to go to the planning board and the health department. I don't see a problem as the health department because it meets their standard. Their standard, interestingly enough, the health department standard in this zone is 40,000 square feet. So we're not gonna have a problem with the health department, and I don't see any planning issues, but I have to, of course, come here because I am reducing the amount of this flag lot.
If a neighbor hired you to oppose this application, what would you say?
I wouldn't take it.
No, if you took
No,
it.
I don't, well, first of all, I don't do opposition work, it's hard enough. I don't do opposition work.
You know what I'm driving at.
No, I'm not. I would.
Why-
If a neighbor came in and said to me, I would say to them, "Why would you oppose this?
But
You're going to make this non-conforming, and this you're going to take away some of the size of this lot. You can so the house can only become smaller, and any construction here is going to go to the south. These neighbors here, okay, they have very small lots, and I'd say you're going to look like a fool. You live on a lot that's you live on a third of an acre lot. You're gonna oppose somebody making a lot 60,000 square feet? I wouldn't take it.
You're saying lots 23, 21, and 20?
Yeah, look at all these lots up, 21, 20, 23, they're maybe, what are they? They're half an acre at the most.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What's the plan for the bigger flag lot?
For the existing
Is that
flag
gonna
lot?
be sold off separately?
Well, she just bought it about 4 or 5 years ago. I think she probably wants to keep it for the state. I don't want to say family planning. That's something else. That's in the drugstore aisle.
Estate
For
You like
one of
that
her
one, Alex?
One of her
That's
kids.
a good one.
One of her kids.
Is it become a buildable lot?
It's already a buildable lot.
It's a buildable lot now.
Yeah, by a huge factor, it's a buildable lot. It's a 3-acre lot.
And if the variance were granted and the lot line approved, it would be a buildable lot
Sure.
as well.
It's that's what. Oh, thank you. That's the density. I have two buildable lots. One has a house on it, and the other one's vacant. Big lot. So I wouldn't be creating another buildable lot by way of this request, which is why I think it's a very modest and light request. I'm not looking for any density. I'm not looking for any setbacks relief here or anything like that.
Today, yes. All right, so given that you don't want to look like a fool for opposing this, according to John, I don't want to look like a fool. What are your impressions?
I don't know. I don't think I have too much of an issue with it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seems fairly. I mean, I understand why they're making this request,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I don't have too much of an issue with it.
Okay. Linda, how about you?
No, John answered my question, and nothing really changes.
And I actually like it because lot number 1 right now is pretty dense. And so if it's in a 3-acre zoning area, it's pretty dense compared to the others. So it kind of spreads it out a bit. So it creates 2 more breathable lots as opposed to 1 crammed in lot and 1 kind of odd
Sort
L-shaped
of
lot.
odd shaped lot, yeah.
So I think it's an improvement, actually.
I think, if you're looking at it from a subdivision point of view, this lot here is like, this is just sort of like the excess. What are you gonna do with this
Right,
lot?
yeah.
That was what was owned, so how else would you configure it? It makes more sense to be married to that first neck lot. Interestingly enough, my client told me that her family used to own olives anyway. Should have held on to it.
World is filled with sad real estate stories.
Very
Correct.
true. Very true.
Okay, John, I wish you had played along with my question, but I agree with my board members, so I'll move to short form approve this.
Second?
Second. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And my client thanks you as well. And I guess I can say good things come to people that wait. Thank you. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Ruth.
Okay, the final one of the night. 3198177 David White's Lane. Lisa, you are back with us.
Good night, Lisa.
Good night. Hello again.
Hello again.
Oh, do we still have sewer laws?
Oh, no.
318?
777. It's nothing different, it's just stuff to look at.
Lisa, before you get going, did we skip one, Alex? Did we skip
we?
3188?
Yeah, we did.
We did.
Oh, I'm sorry, which one was 3?
275 Ox Pasture.
That's me.
Oh, excuse me. I thought we were doing 177 David White's.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
gonna do Ox Pasture
Oh.
first?
We
Yeah,
do-
both
Ox
of these?
Pasture.
We
Oh.
do have a hand up, Sage told me. I'm not sure if that was for the last one, if we open that up for public comment, or if they're for this
So we have
application.
177 David White's.
Okay.
With
That one's
everybody
not
here.
me.
Right, so that's the one we're gonna, in this.
Find out who it is.
Yeah.
Don't go so far, John.
Sage, there's a hand up?
And did we do 99 Sanford? 3189?
That one was done at the last meeting,
Yeah,
so
that
sorry, that shouldn't have been on the agenda.
John, don't run, don't run.
Take care.
John, don't leave. John, we don't know who the hand is. Hold on 1 second. Wait,
Please do.
Yeah.
just wait 1 second.
I'm back in parochial school, what did I do wrong? I think they have a hand up, they want to make sure it's not about their application.
Hello there, Hickeys.
How are you?
We're good, we're good. So, so
Good,
you're,
John.
were you gonna speak on your house at 177 David White's?
Yes, we are.
All right.
Okay.
You're off the hook.
I can go?
Yes.
Thanks, John. Okay, so I'm sorry, I went a little bit out of order. We have to do an application in front of you, and then we'll come back to you.
No problem, we just wanted to make sure you knew that we were here on Zoom because we couldn't get there.
Can we, Brian, is it okay to hear an applicant via Zoom?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we'll be back to you in a few minutes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, 275 Ox Pasture then, Lisa.
Lisa Zaloga, the architect for Sophocles and Sylvia Zuloff at 275 Ox Pasture Road. So you guys heard this briefly back in January, and we were discussing the swimming pool. So what I handed up just now was just a little bit more information. I took, part of your questions had to do with the swimming pool that is currently in the pool building. And so I went over there, I took a picture of the existing 1970s swimming pool that's there. And I also took some more pictures of the site, hoping to persuade you that my proposal was in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. So I just wanted to review what my request was. We have a lot on Ox Pasture Road that has a pre-existing non-conforming historic residence that is located in the far, far back corner of the property. And it really doesn't give us any rear yard at all. There is no exterior swimming pool on the property. There is this 70s-ish indoor swimming pool that exists. One of the other things that I handed up was an aerial of the property. And the red line that I drew across the property is actually the setback that I'm proposing for the street side of the swimming pool, which, as I noted when we first spoke, is more than double the accessory setback that's required in this zone. And what I wanted to show you is just that for the house that's to the west of us, our adjoining neighbor, we're actually behind their house and almost right on level with their existing swimming pool as a setback from Ox Pasture. And you can also see that they have a tennis court in their front yard that is located on Halsey Neck Lane. So I just wanted you to kind of get a feel for where we're talking about locating this swimming pool. It is in line with the swimming pool adjacent to it. It just happens that the house is historic and located so far back on the property. we felt that more than doubling our accessory setback for the principal structure from ox pasture, the fact that this property is completely screened by vegetation from ox pasture as well as from the neighbors would help play that. Now, we do have a conforming location to put this swimming pool on the west side of the house, which would put it closer to the neighbor, because we were also more than doubling our side yard setback from the neighbor. So we would be getting closer to the neighbor to locate the swimming pool. But the real reason that we don't want to put it there is has to do with those other pictures that I submitted. There's really, really beautiful tall screening between these properties, and those trees, and you can see a little bit of the shading now, but they don't even have leaves on them. When they become in full leaf in the summer, they completely shade that area of the property, and my client is really hoping to be able to take advantage of the sun and not have to deal with either trying to do something, taking down some of those trees, or trying to find a way to get some sun for the swimming pool. Now, you at the last meeting asked me what my plans were for that pool building, and I spoke with them. The pool that's in there is, obviously, you can see from the pictures, a very fun 70s-ish kind of pool that is relatively shallow. The goal here is to get an outdoor swimming pool that they can enjoy in the summer and be outside. The pool building, they don't have any real plans for it now. In the future, they would probably want to turn it into more of a spa type building with potentially one of those swim against current pools, taking that pool out, but they don't really want to commit to that at this point in time. So they are asking that being that there really would be no detriment, I don't see, to the character of the neighborhood, not visible from any place other than the sky, in line with the swimming pool that's adjacent to it, as well as behind the house that's adjacent to it, and the fact that it is a historic house and that they really don't have any other good location on the property. They are asking that you potentially would approve this.
How much of the house is actually historic? It looks to be very pieced together over the years.
If you see towards the rear of the house where you see the porch is called out on the right-hand side there, I did that addition maybe 10 years ago or so. So from where that porch is back is an addition that I did. The rest of the house, I believe, is all historic. I'd have to go back and find that out. But I did the addition, which is a garage, a 3-car garage with living space above it at the back of the house, at the back of the property.
And obviously the pool, the indoor pool structure isn't original, and that little curved portion off to the west can't be original.
The curved portion, the octagon portion on the house, you mean?
Yeah.
I think that is. I mean, I can't swear to it. I could go back and find out. Obviously when we did the addition to the house, we did it in conformance with, you add on to the back of the house for a historic house, and you don't want to, change the front facade. I'd have to go back and actually pull the records to tell you how much of the house is historic. I thought that was, but I can't swear to it.
Yeah. It really just strikes me as a little cottage initially.
Can I ask you just a question?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't they want to take the current pool building and make that into the pool of their dreams, outdoors or otherwise?
Well, I think some of it with the outdoors is, you can see from the aerial photo, there's a tennis court to the neighboring, on the neighbor's property that is, I assume, pre-existing non-conforming, because it's like literally right on the property line. And I guess those people play tennis a lot. I don't know. But this pool building helps to act not only as a sound barrier to that noise, but they just don't feel that that's a calm, quiet place to locate the swimming pool. I think that they do eventually want to use this pool building for something, as an interior function. But, that's kind of the general gist of it. That tennis court apparently is very loud to them.
It looks like your owners are proposing a tennis court on the east side of the property?
That's actually under construction.
Oh, okay, so they didn't run into any trouble with the new tree law?
No, that tennis court, actually, I got approval from the planning board from that years ago. And now I guess you don't even have to go to planning for it, but yes, that's approved and it's under construction.
So, let's talk about the 5 points. So, let's see. Is an undesirable change going to be produced in the character of the neighborhood?
No.
No, Linda?
No, I don't think so.
A pool in the front yard?
Yeah, it's very, very heavily foliaged, and it's a big piece of property. I don't think it'll change, even as you drive by.
Okay. Carol, what do you think?
I agree. It's behind that red Maginot line that she's drawn. It's in the back half of the property. If the house was a normal house sitting in the middle, it'd be in the middle or the backish yard. So.
Joyce, what do you think? Undesirable change to the neighborhood.
I think it seems to be fairly well screened, although I'm still a little bit uncertain about locating a pool in the front yard.
Agreed. We've already covered number 2. We know that there is a...
Can I say something about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Take a look at the house to the left. See where the house to the left is located on the lot? It's in the middle of the lot. And then they have their pool, of course, at an angle, a 45-degree angle. The new pool in this lot would be essentially beside that. So if this house were normally situated in the middle of the lot, that wouldn't be in the front yard. Now, I know that doesn't change the fact that it is going to be in the front yard, but in terms of its location of depth in the property, just keep in mind, it's because this odd, far setback location of the house. It's almost like you have to put everything in the front yard because the house is in the backyard.
Well, one would say that the code is the code, and
Yeah,
you just
absolutely.
can't have a pool here.
And they should convert the old pool, because
Yeah.
that's their decision. That gets to the other factors, but I just want to try to help out a little bit.
Okay, I understand. All opinions are welcome, and the pool to the east, or the west rather, is legal. Just given the way the tennis court, I don't know how they got that tennis court over there.
I don't know how they got it. And like I said, the tennis court on the street, I don't know how they got that one, and the tennis court that is obviously within a couple of feet of the property line in that back corner is also, I don't know how they got that one either. But.
Okay. So number 2, we do know that there are other feasible alternatives.
There are. They're not. They have their detriment.
They have their pros and cons.
They have their pros
but
and
there
cons.
there is a conforming location on the property. Is the requested variance substantial? We give a lot of variances for pools on corner lots. We gave one tonight, right? I don't remember ever giving a variance request for a front yard pool.
I think there was a case with a flag lot where a pool was granted in the front yard.
Okay, flag lot.
But yeah, different situation.
Different, I could see that.
But I've more than doubled my setback, which you probably won't find in any other kind of village situation.
Because of where the house is located here.
because of where the house is located. I mean, I got one with a front yard setback on the corner of the corner of Halsey and, oh, I don't even remember, but I don't know that it was in the front yard. I think I just got a front yard setback.
Okay, so let's think about it another way. We would never grant a variance for a swimming pool in the front yard on Elm Street,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
So the argument here is that just because it's further from the street, that's
Well,
the
the
thinking.
argument here is that the house, and I'm not necessarily arguing for or against right now,
Mm-hmm.
but the house itself ends 38 feet from the back line.
Mm-hmm.
The front of the house is, I have to look at this chart, but, so that's the issue, is you've got 38 feet between the back of the house and the line to put in a backyard pool.
Mm-hmm.
And the house is
Impossible.
actually 248 feet from the street.
Right, so the house is in the backyard on the setback line, essentially.
Correct.
Okay.
And
That's
the
the
way,
problem.
and the historic nature of it, the way the house, you actually enter from the side, hence where the driveway is located and all of those kinds of things. So it's, from a layout standpoint, it doesn't make sense to have it really anywhere else, but go ahead.
But having said that, they do have a pool.
Then
It's
that
available
goes to number
and
3
can
as
be
well.
used.
Like, is it substantial? Yes, because they're asking for 2 swimming pools.
Well, the code says you can't have 2 outdoor swimming pools. I'm asking for an outdoor swimming pool where I don't have one. Do I have an indoor swimming pool? Yes. That's not the same.
But this gets to, is there another way to achieve the goal? And
Yeah.
that is, sure, convert the existing pool.
Mhm.
I
Or
mean, not that
put
you
it in
wanna
the
do that.
conforming location.
Well, that's what I mean. You
Yeah,
convert
yeah.
it, put it there.
Well, I mean, she can leave her indoor, I don't know if she or he, they can leave their indoor pool and have the outdoor pool in a conforming location.
True.
Is the alleged difficulty self-created? Yes, we know that all variance requests are self-created.
Well,
right.
but I have a historic house that I mean, the house was there long before they were.
I'm going to argue that it's not really a historic house.
Or even if it was, there's
Oh, the
other
ARB
places.
thinks it is.
But I think the point is they didn't put the house there, right? They didn't build it at the location, and to that extent, that's part of the hardship.
But it's also, but it is self-created in that there are other places to put that pool that are conforming. They just
Understood.
want to put it in the front yard.
Yeah.
That is self-created in that
Yeah,
sense.
I mean, she doesn't necessarily want to put it in the front yard. She just doesn't want to put it in a shady location.
She doesn't want to take down a current pool and make it an outdoor pool. She doesn't
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
put it in the
They don't
trees
want
to
to.
the
They don't
shade.
want to
She
knock
doesn't want
down
it
a
to be near the
building.
tent. Right.
Yeah.
She doesn't want. I get that.
Yeah.
But that's a personal decision.
Correct.
I could just see the most beautiful pool house and swimming pool on the northeast corner of this property. You know, where this.
Even over there though, it's all of those trees run along that property line. That whole side is shaded. I can't get that far away. I mean, that's the shading that you'll see here is the same shading that you would see over here. It's not.
No, if we think about the sun path, Lisa, if the pool and the, a pool house or whatever, or where your proposed tennis court is, you're going to get amazing sun there.
Oh, well, the tennis courts. Yeah, I can't. The tennis
Yeah.
courts over there. There's also a lot of trees off over there, but I was talking about over here.
Yeah.
I mean, to knock down the pool building is the same problem as locating it on the side of the house.
Okay.
I was hoping that the fact that we were doubling our accessory setback and moving twice as far away from the neighbors, there's no impact on the neighbors. I would think that the neighbor would prefer me to have it where I'm proposing it as opposed to right next to their pool.
And I think we can probably all agree that, we could grant you that, right? Like that you're probably right there, but this is a balancing of 5 points.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think you've accomplished that.
Okay.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we appreciate the work you did to create this, tremendous setback. But I just feel like given the fact that there are other locations for this pool, that it's a It's a difficult situation.
There's no real hardship to the owner.
Okay.
Linda, Carol, I'm very happy to hear opposing views.
I'm in the same dilemma. Yeah. I'd like to disagree, but I can't disagree with you.
Okay, Linda?
I would like to disagree because I think that Lisa has made every accommodation to the neighbors, and in consideration that everybody around them has somehow gotten what they wanted, and this doesn't seem to be an extraordinary ask, I don't think.
Okay. How about this, Brian? I think you have a sense of how.
Are we 2-2 or 3-1?
I think we're 3-1.
Okay.
But so let's write a decision to that effect, and then
Okay.
let's take the 2 weeks off and think about this and come back and deliberate.
Before you do that, I mean, if you do, what happens if you do that, and then it's 3-1? Is that denied with prejudice, without prejudice? What is that? How does that work?
Brian?
I'm not it's denied. I'm not sure what you mean by prejudice or without.
Could they come back again with the same application, or could they not?
Alex, do we have a provision in the code that allows them to come back with the same or similar application within a certain period of time?
No, we don't, but the board may consider a denial as precedent and may consider whether any of the circumstances have changed that would make them reach a different decision. A denial without prejudice would be just like dismissing or withdrawing the case, but a denial would be a denial.
Then can I ask you to hold it open?
Why?
Because I want to have a conversation with them about whether they would be willing to do something else.
All right. I mean, we kind of expressed like you came back with the same application as. I don't like that when that happens.
No, I understand. I'll just give me 2 weeks.
All right, for sure.
Thank you.
All right, we'll hold it open.
Did we hear if there were any other public comments? I don't think there's anyone else in the waiting room, but just to make sure.
But Lisa, seriously, if you come back, there's got to be substantial changes to the application.
Okay. Is there anything that would make you feel differently about the application that you can think of?
The front yard.
I'm not going to change my mind.
I think the front yard is his problem. You gotta get into the side or backyard kind of thing.
Okay.
That's the big challenge here.
If we just run the 5 points, you don't put it over the top.
Okay. Okay.
So do you still want the
Yes, please.
time?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Then I will move to hold open.
Well,
for-
do you want to continue it to the next meeting date?
Yes, please.
Okay. So it would be a motion to continue to April 24th.
Yep.
That's the motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So Lisa, April 17th is going to be your due date for any revised submissions you'd like the board to see.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
At noon.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's let Sage the Hickeys back in, please, for case 3198, 177 David White's Lane.
Good night.
Hi,
Night.
Lisa. Okay, so Hickeys, I think you probably just heard that application, and we talked about how the applicant had the same exact application that they had the month before, and it wasn't viewed great. So let's hear about how you have taken our advice from the previous month to heart and have changed your plans.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time. Mr. Chairman, we went to our architect after the recommendations that you made. We gave him all of your recommendations. He incorporated them into our new revised plans.
Okay.
He cleaned up verified the measurements so that they're the same as the surveyor. We moved the garage back 5 feet. So now we're only requesting a variance of 4 foot 7 inches, which is what we spoke about at the last hearing. And we also, you had mentioned last time that the house looked like a very long house. So I asked him if there was anything visually that he could do to change that. So if you see on the new plans, he took out the connection on the first floor so that not only is the garage set back now, but you have a visual opening on the first floor, and the house is connected only on the second floor.
Joseph, let me stop you for 1 second. I don't have this in the Dropbox.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it either. I want to make sure that it made it there. Let me see if it's in the file.
Wait, I see it.
Do you want me to give you the hard copy from?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to
Yeah,
pull
I
it
see it here.
on my screen?
We can
Right,
pull it
it's
up.
in
through-
here, but it's
We've got
all
your documents,
month
we're just
old,
gonna-
month old,
Right,
month old.
yeah.
Different
Yeah,
places.
if you're able to share your screen, that would be great. I do see that we took in an application on March 17th.
Yeah.
I apologize if
Oh.
it didn't make it onto
Okay.
the Dropbox.
Okay,
Oh.
I have the drawings.
Okay, so if you go to drawing A5, that shows you the new visual look at the house. So it doesn't look like one long connected house, which is a comment that you had made that you didn't like the last time you looked at it. So I had them take out the connection on the first floor, so now you have a separation between the house and the garage, and the attachment is on the second floor. And we moved the garage back to 5 feet.
So it's shifted back.
So he's 500 here.
All right, sorry, I'm looking at this for the first time.
No problem.
So when I look at A3, the second story where the bedrooms are, that hallway is the connector?
Yes.
Yes.
Nice.
That did not change. There was no recommendation for
Sure.
that to change the last time.
No,
The
yep,
recommendations were for us to push the garage back,
yep.
which we did.
Not gonna see it well.
So Alex, what is the setback that the garage should have been? They've moved it 5 more feet, so it's a total of 35.5. What's the deviation?
Let's see, the requirement here is 40 feet.
Okay, so it's
Uh,
4.5.
Yeah.
What's your day-to-day main entry to the house? Like up onto the deck and through the kitchen?
So the deck doesn't exist right now?
No, but if you built this.
Oh, yes, it would be through the front of the front of the house into, like a foyer and then the kitchen. The foyer and the kitchen would be attached.
On the David White side.
Oh, here, David White.
Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of like how we have that walkway now because the connection feels much less forced, right?
Yeah.
Between the family room or the dining room, wherever it was previously. It definitely helps me with the length on the street.
Yeah, I told him what your concerns were, and he got it right away.
And
It actually looks
It looked a lot
nicer.
Okay, 35 and a half feet where 40 is required?
Yeah, so there's about 4.5.
Okay, so that's, I mean, that's a minimal request,
And
right?
across the street is commercial buildings, and they've got hedges, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So they've done a great job.
So I definitely appreciate the adjustments to the plan I think it's a big improvement. I feel like the house is the primary structure now on Powell, and not this big bar of things. I'm inclined to approve this.
It looks good to me, I think, yeah.
I know. I'm inclined to approve as well. You guys did a great job, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Okay,
Just
Linda,
so-
what do you think?
Just so
I
that you
think
know,
that
you-
they definitely acknowledged everything that we suggested and made massive, great improvements.
Okay.
He was gonna say something.
Oh, do you guys want to say anything else?
I just wanted to let you know that you saved us about $20,000 on the renovation.
My pleasure. I usually just cost money, so it's nice to hear I saved some for once in my life. Okay, so I'll move to short form approve this.
And Luke, could you include in the resolution the date of the revised plans you're looking at, just to make clear that we have the right plans?
312.
Okay, yeah. So we're looking at the new plans where the garage has moved back further. The request is 35.5 feet of setback where 40 is required. I will move to approve that via short form decision.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Linda, you're an aye. Okay, thank you guys. Good luck with your home.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So much.
Can't wait to see
Thank
it.
you.
We'll be driving by.
We'll drive by.
Okay, that is all the cases. Alex, we're just gonna adopt the draft calendar as our calendar, and we're all gonna do our best to attend as many meetings as we can.
We'll be with you.
Okay.
Right
Great
choice?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right, meeting
And
adjourned.
Tom.
Tom's on the
Thanks,
phone.
guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
Linda. Thank you for joining.